The Hidden History of the Human Race, Part 7. You're listening to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents to Brothers of the Serpent podcast. Coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau, and this is episode 199.
Ooh, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
That is amazing to think about. So we're going to be doing more of Hidden History of the Human Race, Forbidden Archaeology today. I think the Watcher is going to join us in studio. At least that's what he says is going to happen. So we'll see if that actually happens. He says he's on his way, but you know how it is with the Watcher. We have to wait for his re-entry window to be in the right place.
That's
or
right.
for him to be in the right place to, however that works. So what else should we do before I get to space weather news? We got agricultural update. What's going on with the old...
Everything's growing like crazy.
Yeah.
We got lots of rain, and canopies are creeping over and creating shadows.
Yeah, that's right.
So the grapes are doing great. Clusters are forming and very nicely.
Yep, and the babies, the newbies,
Yeah,
they're
coming up.
sprouting. They look good.
Found some bad sectors. We're gonna have to hit
Yeah.
with some nitrogen.
Yeah, we got to do a little work on the soil in
Yeah.
some places.
Ancient farmers there used
no surprises
some
there.
really bad chemicals.
You don't get to find out until you try to plant something there.
That's right. But yeah, just the daily grind out there.
Yep.
Wine's coming along. We're ordering bottles and labels, and I'm getting Mike from HowTube to help us with the new labels for the 2020.
Oh,
vintage.
wow.
Yes,
Yeah,
he's going to be
that's
joining
really
the
great.
team. He's
awesome.
looking forward to it.
Sweet.
So, yeah.
So he is going to get his bottom of the barrel bottles.
That's right.
All right.
That's right.
I was promising him to send him some bottom of the barrel bottles. He's like, no, man. I'm like, I'm going to send you some from the bottom of the barrel, buddy. No.
I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's
he's-
really cool.
Yeah, because we've had the previous artist was good, but communication was a little more difficult. He was kind of doing it on the side, and so finally, it's like I get to have this person who I've been dealing with for like a year now, and I know we can have Zoom meetings with the whole team, and everybody's gonna like him.
Yeah.
He's real easy to get a hold of and easy to work with. I'm looking forward to it. So that's a good thing, and hopefully.
Do we need to tell him about Dan though? Like Mike, when you're talking to the boss.
No. You got to let him be surprised.
Okay. Oh, there's the gate. The Watcher has arrived.
Which
Splashdown.
gate is it? Gate B.
Yeah.
Okay,
Gate B.
cool. All right. Well, we will have an appearance of the Watcher in studio once again. And
Should we pause
yeah.
it? Or should we just keep going? Let him walk in or what?
Yeah, just let him walk in.
Just let him walk
Right.
in. Space weather news from space. From spaceweather.com. CME sparks minor geomagnetic storm. As expected, a coronal mass ejection, CME, struck Earth's magnetic field on May 26th. The CME was not fast, but it was dense, doubling the density of solar wind in its wake. The impact ultimately sparked a minor G1 class geomagnetic storm, which is now subsiding. Also, the total lunar eclipse, which I missed. It was too cloudy, and I don't think we could really see much of it here anyway.
Yeah, we weren't going to really be in the path.
Yeah.
It was going to be at like 3 a.m, 4 a.m-ish. But we're right on the edge. I think we probably would have gotten a little bit of the penumbral.
Yeah.
I think.
Maybe. Yeah.
Or would it have?
We could have seen.
See the whole
I
thing.
think we could have seen some, but it was cloudy. I mean.
Oh, okay.
So yes, there was a lunar eclipse earlier today. The full moon passed through the shadow of Earth and for 14 and a half minutes became the color of a sunset. Christopher Go photographed totality from the Philippines. And he says, this is how the moon looked through my Stellar View SV70 refractor. It's the best totality I've ever captured. And yeah, that is beautiful. It's very...
Yeah, that's awesome.
So you can browse the gallery at spaceweather.com for more views from around the world.
I guess, yeah, you can see with a lunar eclipse, as long as it's at night, doesn't matter where you are. you can see it because the Earth's shadow is so much bigger. Like
Yeah.
with a solar eclipse, you have to be in the path. The path is
Right.
narrow.
Yeah. It just has to be it has to be at
It has to be clear
Yeah.
and it has to be nighttime.
Yeah. Current conditions, solar wind speed is 399.5 kilometers per second. The density is an extremely high 24.8 protons per cubic centimeter.
Wow, is that the highest we've
That's definitely way the highest that we've ever had.
Huh.
24.8.
It's dense up there,
Most of them
folks.
are in the single digits that we've ever read.
No wonder the Watcher came down.
Sunspot number is 36. Neutron count today is 10.1% above the space age average. Very high reading. And the KP index right now is quiet at 3, but the 24-hour max was 5, which they rate as stormy, or a storm. So there you have it, folks. Space weather news for Wednesday.
Cool. And speaking of space, from Science News, where we get all our science news. This is from ScienceDaily.com. Plasma jets reveal magnetic fields far, far away. For the first time, researchers have observed plasma jets interacting with magnetic fields in a massive galaxy cluster 600 million light years away, thanks to the help of radio telescopes and supercomputer simulations. The findings, published in the journal Nature, can help clarify how such galaxy clusters evolve, and also sheds light on a new and popular theory of the creation of the universe called magnetic universe. But yeah, gigantic plasma jets,
Wow.
like intergalactic plasma jets, basically. Yeah.
That's cool.
It would have been cool if someone would have come up with an idea that might have, captured like the idea of huge plasma jets that extend out across galaxies. But no one ever had. It's too bad. Missed opportunity. They could have called it Magnetic Universe.
They could have.
Second half of segment 1. Here we go.
That's right.
Take 2.
That's right. Watcher's here now.
Yeah, what's up, buddy?
Welcome, Watcher.
Glad to be here
Yeah.
again.
Shh. Zero mistakes.
Oh yeah,
No,
sorry.
no redos. We never do that. All right. So this article is from the Washington Examiner. This was sent to me by Marty, who is, you guys know from the UFO episodes. And again, I want to say, so I'm going to read this on the show. And I'm going to say, like I did the last time we read one of these UFO disclosure episodes or articles, there's political names in here. Normally, I would not read an article that had political names, but the nature of this situation, it includes it. So they're going to be in there, but just that's just how it is. So this one's by Tom Rogan. It's called "How Will Intelligence Community UFO Report Deal with the True Unknowns?" Can't scroll this article. Okay, here we go. In June, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence is scheduled to provide an intelligence community report to Congress on unidentified flying objects, or what the Pentagon refers to as unidentified aerial phenomena. This report matters. Credible military witnesses and radar data suggest that UFOs may have been flying around in U.S. airspace since or even prior to the Second World War. The vast majority of UFOs are weather or astronomical phenomena, misidentified airframes, or the products of defective witness reports, but some UFOs are true unknowns. That is to say, objects which have evaded exhaustive attempts at identification. Those UFOs are the subject on which the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, led by then Chairman Marco Rubio, sought answers when it requested this intelligence community report back in 2020. So what can we expect, and what should we expect? Much of the report's content is likely to fall within a classified annex, held there to protect the sources and methods of U.S. intelligence gathering efforts. But if Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines accedes to the Senate's Democratic mandate, the report should include 4 public findings. First, the assessment that some credible UFOs are very likely to be capabilities operated by other arms of the U.S. government or by foreign adversaries. Tyler Rogaway recently documented this concern in detail at the War Zone. A standout consideration here is the possibility that China and Russia are using U.S., Canada, or Central American-based civilian aircraft and civilian freighters as launch platforms for balloon or drone-based air operations in U.S. military training areas. Such tactics might feasibly evade U.S. military sensors designed to detect foreign military submarines and aircraft, for example. Balloons would appear to offer a particularly cheap and deniable means of signals and electronic intelligence collection against U.S. military assets. Indeed, some photographs of UFOs recently taken by U.S. military air crews bear similarity to balloons. Elements of the U.S. government might also be conducting red team detection response tests by operating unconventional drones and sensor deception platforms near to U.S. forces. The Pentagon could then, at least somewhat honestly, claim that these UFO incidents involve unidentified aerial phenomena, even if it had a suspicion that the UFOs were actually being operated by other government arms. Still, this is only one of the 4 points the report should address. I emphasize that concern because I fear that Haynes may play up this factor to the exclusion or underplaying of the 3 others, and that would be incompatible with the spirit of the Senate's request and the obligation, compatible with protecting national security, to inform the public more fully as to what is going on. Consider what I believe should be the second factor in the report, namely that the most compelling UFOs, those UFOs which lack conventional alternative explanation after exhaustive investigation, give credible indication of being highly advanced, intelligently controlled vehicles. The government's confidence that these most compelling UFOs are vehicles versus amorphous things takes root in data returns from multiple sensor platforms. These platforms include satellite, sonar, radar, full-spectrum electromagnetic, and trained military observer witness reports, such as Air Force and Navy ground and flight crews. Third factor, based on the same evidence, the assessment that some of these UFOs have performance capabilities beyond the understood technical capacity of any Earth nation. This sounds extraordinary, and it is, but even if not formally offered in writing, it is also the truth recognized by those who have worked intimately on this issue. After all, these most compelling UFOs evince means of non-jet propulsion-based hypersonic travel in the air and in space, and of 100 knots plus speeds underwater. Some UFOs also show apparent anti-gravity capabilities, reflected by their instantaneous acceleration and deceleration in a manner that would otherwise cause self-destruction under the stresses of hundreds of G-forces.
Seems like it should be called anti-inertia.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're exactly right. I don't know why they call that anti-gravity.
Yeah, it wouldn't matter if you were doing it out in space.
Right. It still would kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right. It
still would destroy the materials.
The materials, yeah. That's right. So this international caveat of any Earth nation is critical. Sources tell me that although the most compelling UFOs are a global phenomena, no element of the U.S. government or private sector, such as Elon Musk, has vehicles that can do what these UFOs can do. Nor, they tell me, is the intelligence community aware of any credible evidence to suggest that so-called near-peer nations, such as China, Russia, or Israel, are in possession of such vehicles. Fourth factor, that there is a synergy between the appearance of these most compelling UFOs and specific contemporaneous events, notably the presence of nuclear extraction, power, and weapons activities. Although it is classified as top secret, this is one reason the Navy assesses that its aircraft carriers and submarines, which are nuclear-powered and in some cases nuclear-armed, frequently interact with UFOs. As I say, all of this matters greatly. Former presidents George W. Bush and Donald Trump have recently taken questions on UFOs and have refused to rule them out as explained. For the first time, former President Barack Obama this week admitted that some UFOs show unexplained performance characteristics and behavior patterns. Chris Mellon is a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence. Mellon has been instrumental in forcing the Pentagon to address this issue more publicly and ensuring that Congress is fully informed by the Pentagon and intelligence community. On Tuesday, he told me that the current range of opinion and speculation is a testament to the incredible and unacceptable amount of ignorance and uncertainty we are living with. We urgently need action to find the truth regardless of the answers. Indeed, the intelligence community's first responsibility is to gather and corroborate information that can be used to inform the nation's national security leadership, as directed by Congress. As with this report, Director Haynes and the intelligence community have an obligation to provide people with the best assessment of the available information. The possibility that something extraordinary is occurring is no longer a legitimate excuse for deflection.
Well, I don't want to be too political about this, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was all about polls.
Could be.
As far as like these congressional people like getting all about it. I mean, their ratings are through the floor
Yeah.
on the regular. So it's like if anybody notices like, oh wow, and, your ratings are going up because you're talking about UFOs, then they're going to jump on board.
They're all going to jump on board.
It just I mean that would be my my knee-jerk reaction as to why Congress is getting so involved and making such being so public about all this.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's a good force for mainstream media as well. I mean, they care about ratings.
Yeah.
They saw
So so technically, would you say this might be a positive development? This is how democracy is supposed to work or something, right? It's like they find out that this is popular with the people, so they're going with it.
Yeah, you could look at it that way for sure.
It's like people want this, so they're doing it. Like I know
very
that's
optimistic
like
way to
very
look at it.
optimistic approach there.
Yeah, I'm just speaking strictly to the motivations of these congressional people.
Yes. So I would say like, no matter what, I don't trust what the government's doing, and I don't ever expect them to do it for the good of the people or any of that kind of stuff, right? They're doing it for their own means, their own reasons, their own gains, right? It's never because because people need to have the truth or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, specifically the intelligence community, like they're not doing this for the American people.
Right. Yeah. And this article makes it sound like that the intelligence community is kind of being forced into this by this Senate committee. And I'm just like, okay, maybe. I don't know. Nevertheless, it's all interesting stuff.
Yeah.
So
Bust out the popcorn.
that's right. It's popcorn time.
I would add to that it's difficult to let somebody guide you with a narrative when they have 75, 80 or more years worth of secrets in the closet.
That's right.
They could release whichever parts of stories they want and take you anywhere. So
Yeah, that's right.
Be cautious.
Yeah.
Yep. When you know the whole story and they don't,
Yeah. That's right.
And then you have a captive audience who's ready and waiting for anything you throw at them. It's a dangerous mix.
Yeah. Listen to the Watcher, folks. He is from space,
I know things.
so he does know things. That's right. What you got?
From my favorite scriptard site, phys.org. This is electromagnetic anomalies that occur before an earthquake. It has been documented over hundreds of years that various electromagnetic anomalies occur a few weeks before the occurrence of a large earthquake. These electromagnetic anomalies are variations that appear in telluric current, geomagnetism, electromagnetic waves, etc. before the earthquake. And there are various models to explain the mechanism, blah, 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 blah. And some researchers, blah, 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 and did a new experiment. In the resulting theory is this. In the area that is at the epicenter of a seismic fault, a fault valve forms before the next earthquake occurs. It is believed that dense layers in the crust are formed over time. The fluid, including some gases such as water, that springs up from the vicinity is trapped by the fault valve and stays there. When the shear stress applied to the fault or the pressure of the stagnant reserved fluid reaches criticality, the fault valve cracks. The high pressure fluid rises along the fault, and the pressure gradually decreases. As the pressure decreases, carbon dioxide or methane that are now dissolved in the fluid are degassed at once, expanding in volume and expanding the cracks. The model considers the fault becomes fragile and the rupture accelerates, leading to an earthquake. The gas becomes electrified in the process. That is, it is charged with electricity. The trapped electrons in the defects are suddenly released due to the thermal stimulus and attached to the gas molecules. Because it is negatively charged, a current is generated as the gas moves. In the lab, several types of rock, including granite, gabbro, quartz diorite, and basalt, were tested. A simple estimation found that there is a high possibility that a large current will be generated immediately before the earthquake, depending on the earthquake magnitude.
Man, it seems like there should be maybe a theory, that somehow includes electricity in some of these large events.
Would you say that since it governs like the Earth as a large planet, that perhaps it governs things in the entire universe?
I mean, yeah.
Theoretical application?
You could apply that broadly.
You could apply it broadly.
It's just sad that no one has done that yet. It's a total... it was a missed opportunity.
Definitely a missed opportunity there. Somebody should get on it.
Yeah. Magnetic universe or something.
But going back to the article there, what exactly are they trying to say? Like, what's the idea that they're trying to convey? Is this a new finding that this electrical current is?
Yeah, they're trying to figure out, obviously, why there's, various theories, but they don't have anything experimentally. And this guy came up with this idea, and I'm not sure. I don't know.
It's just reporting on findings. That's all it is. That's what they're doing in the article.
They have a hypothesis that this is why all of these electromagnetic anomalies occur before the earthquake, is because what's actually causing the earthquake is once that fault valve cracks, this highly compressed fluid.
Okay, they're trying to explain the electromagnetic
that
anomalies.
contains all these dissolved gases, expands out, and the gases immediately degas, which causes further cracking, which eventually caused the earthquake. But the motion of that gas is like, it ends up being extrememely negatively charged or something like that.
Okay.
Causes all these above ground electromagnetic anomalies or something.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know.
I'd imagine that those could possibly have some sort of role in detection. Like, it'd be great to be able to give somebody a warning ahead of time, like even if it's an hour. Big earthquake coming.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah, I think the primary wave does give some warning, but it's not much, right? You lived in California. You know this stuff.
Yeah, I also had a waterbed at the time, so I slept through most of the earthquakes. It was just normal rolling.
So I guess I should have read this
Why are there waves?
previous paragraph. Basically, I guess the prevailing theory was that the stress applied to the fault produced the electric current, right?
Okay.
So you could think maybe piezoelectric.
Okay, it's piezo
current.
or something, yeah.
But the stress applied to the fault takes place over hundreds of or thousands of years before the occurrence of the actual earthquake. So why is it right before the earthquake is detected do these
you get this
anomalies
massive,
occur?
Okay. And so they're saying that somehow the expansion of the gas is causing this.
And so it says it's a common belief among seismologists that it is impossible for the stress to suddenly increase and generate a large current just before the earthquake. So therefore, the mechanism had not yet been explained. So this guy, his name is Dr. Yuji Inamoto.
Okay, and he's trying to give a mechanism for why there's this electric current right before the earthquake.
Basically, what I read was their hypothesis.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So
then they conducted laboratory experiments on indoor rock fracture and gas-electric interactions to solve the mystery of the electromagnetic anomalies. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So like the crust functions as a capacitor, and then the gas comes in and basically like a screwdriver across two plates catches all the current and then lets it out all at once.
Or it's a function of the gas expanding and moving really quickly.
Quickly and generating an electric current because of the...
Right.
And
it's like static and friction and expansion stuff. I don't know. It's an interesting idea.
Definitely needs a theory.
Yeah.
Wrap it all, put it in a nice package.
Yeah.
I don't fully understand it, but I thought it was cool.
It is cool.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Are there like...
Fizz.org. Just go check it out if you want to know more, because, I mean...
Yeah, there you go.
It's hard to understand.
All right, emails. I haven't done emails in a while. Need to get back to doing that.
Yeah.
So I have tons and tons of them stacked up.
What's up, people?
Yeah. This one's from February 22nd. It's called A Couple Things from Jim. He says, "Yo, Snake Bros, I enjoy your cast. Thank you for what you do. I am the last of 4 brothers. I miss them, and your brotherly interaction reminds me of them and the good times we had.
Oh, man.
A couple things and thoughts. Maybe the Maltese cart ruts, being in limestone, were originally made in a soft sea bottom by some sort of sled or underwater harvester a zillion years ago. Then the ruts were filled in with pluvial, thanks Randall, sediment from a catastrophe. That catastrophic soft sediment has washed and weathered away over time, leaving the harder limestone. Modern commercial fishing dredges the seafloor and scars it with long lines that are made in a single pass of their weighted nets, or whatever they call their fishing apparatus in Norwegian. There is evidence of similar lines made by modern fishing practices in the high-resolution images of the Baltic Sea anomaly. Maybe those ruts are evidence of man's existence, mafia, which stands for millions of fucking years ago, when Malta's surface was beneath the waves. Next, speaking of heavy lifting, please watch the YouTube video, salvage of a 102-ton glacial erratic rock, and please share your comments, comparing this effort to the megalithic feats. The ancients did not have German engineers, nylon straps, or Teutonic heavy equipment to assist them, did they? I would enjoy your comments, especially if you two and Uncharted X were to share your thoughts in a joint podcast, pun intended. Thanks again. You bright lads are leading the way. From Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah. I really like the cart ruts idea.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah, it made me think of when we would go trolling. You know, like back when we actually went trolling.
Yeah. Like
in the
fishing,
bay.
Fishing style, yeah.
We'd get real shallow and the motor would make a trough.
The troll motor would leave a trough in the bay. Yeah, exactly. So if you had 2 of those.
Yeah. Twin outboards. And
Yep. Yeah. Or if you're dragging some kind of sledded net or something like that, definitely. That's a really cool idea.
Well,
No?
it would be hard to explain it how it would go over hills.
Yeah.
Flat surfaces would be okay.
That's why if it's a net that's made to stay on the bottom, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
and
there
it's
you go.
sliding on sleds,
Yeah,
right?
That's good.
Yeah. As for the heavy lifting, moving the erratic rock, I agree with you. The ancients did not have German engineers or the Teutonic heavy equipment, but they may have had nylon straps and heavy equipment. Just may not have been Teutonic, and they probably didn't have Germans. But yeah, we didn't watch the video, but you basically gave the rundown of it here, and I think it's interesting. And 102 tons. The ancients moved many heavier things than that, so it's very interesting.
It's also roughly 7.5 T-Rexes.
That's right. Thanks, Watcher.
You're keeping your job.
Yeah, that's right.
I do what I can.
Also, and this is just to everybody who writes in emails, not specifically Jim, but this brings it up. When people say, "Will you watch these YouTube videos, or will you read this book, or will you read this guy's paper, or will you read this whole website and let me know what you think?" That's almost never going to happen. But if you summarize the stuff that you want us to comment on, we can, like we did there with Jim. But yeah, it's the email segments. This is like low effort. I just want to be able to read the email and say, hell yeah, I totally agree. I don't want to watch a video. So, thank you. Okay. This is from Chris. It's called Just an Idea. It says, Snakes! Was listening to one of your older snake casts where I think Kyle was talking about walking up to one of the pyramids holding a scale model of a pyramid to show him how close he was to the actual pyramids. So this made me think, is there an angle on the Giza Plateau from where you could view the 3 pyramids where they would appear to be the exact same height or size? If so, would that exact spot be important? I don't recall ever hearing anyone mention this. Probably bunk, but there are so many important measurements factored into the Great Pyramids. Why wouldn't they bury something important at that visual intersection? Just a thought. Thanks, guys and gals, and with the addition of new family member, congrats from Chris.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, dude, that's a cool idea. We'll definitely have to check that out.
Yeah, we'll have to.
I've never heard anybody say it, but I mean, yeah, seems like there could be, some kind of vantage point where where they would look a certain way. Like, I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a cool idea.
And it's like that might be hard to line up because I'm just thinking of the alignment and then the fact that the Great Pyramid is the largest one, but the second pyramid, Khafre, is in the middle, and it's a little bit smaller than the Great Pyramid. But where it's situated and the way that it's situated, it appears to be the same height as the Great Pyramid because the Great Pyramid's like a little bit lower.
Yeah.
Right. So you can just stand there and look at those two, and they look like they're the same size. And in the other pyramid, Menkaure, I can never remember how to say it. Yeah. That one's a lot smaller and kind of off to the side. And so I don't know if there's a place where you could stand where they all... definitely the smallest pyramid would have to be the one in the front.
Right.
So yeah, maybe we could check that out. That's an interesting idea. Thanks, Chris. All right, this is from D. It's a comment on episode 187, which was a listener communications episode. He says, found you guys after listening to most of Graham Hancock's audiobooks. I was amazed to find out you guys are in Bandera. I spent all of my childhood summers in Bandera on the Medina at my grandparents' place. I've been living in the hill country for 22 years now. Anyway, I've been interested in the things you are bringing to the world all of my life, so thanks for what you're doing. From D.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
Gotta hit that river better.
Yeah, maybe you can come on some of the meetups.
Yeah.
Since you're out here.
Yeah, we're gonna have some meetups. That'd
Yeah.
be cool.
All right, this is a Patreon message from Taylor. It's called 33.3% Mind Expansion. I love this podcast. Yeah, there you go. I love this podcast. You guys are killing it every single time. Keep doing what you do best. And don't let any squares tell you how you should run your show. It's your show. Thank you for being a voice of reason.
Don't tell me how to run my show.
Don't you tell me not to let anybody tell me how to run my show. That's telling me how to run my show. Thank you for being a voice of reason, dialectic, and intrigue in the realm of mysteries, and for focusing more on tangible evidence and interesting topics within scientific purview. I love the woo and the paranormal, but it's refreshing to listen to a show like this. Thank you so much.
Buddy.
And thanks for being a Patreon. Really appreciate that.
Oh, yeah.
Also, to anybody who's interested, if you have listened to every single episode thus far, 4.43 times 10 to the 24th. That is how much your brain has expanded from its original size.
Oh, my
If you assume 33.3% for every show, that's a lot of brain expansion.
Compounding brain expansion.
What was
It's
the
expanding into other dimensions.
What was the message we got from? It was an anonymous message. Right. It was anonymous, and it was a PayPal message, right? It was the bounty paid. And he's like,
yeah.
And he's like, please give me back my small brain.
That's right.
I've never forgotten that. All right, this one's from Leo. It's called Sexy Woman. Hi, guys. I'm a big appreciator of your work. Came to you through Randall Carlson podcast and to his through Forum Borealis. I'm a big fan there. Anyway, why are you in your latest shows with Ben from Uncharted X talking about this strange, sexy woman all the time? You get the phonetic joke. Best regards, Leo. A fine art painter in Munich. Thanks, Leo.
Thank you, buddy.
And yes, what did you say?
It's because there are huge rocks.
That's right. There we go.
Way to fight stereotypes, Leo. Germans can be funny about phonetics. Love it.
Oh, yeah. All right, I think that's it. Taking a break.
Yeah, real quick, just wanted
Look at
to
that,
say...
33.
Oh. Just wanted to say, what's up, dude, to our old friend from Georgia, Steven.
Oh, yes.
How's it going, buddy? We got your email.
We got the email. Yeah. We actually got it when we were on a trip. Were we
Yeah.
on a trip? Yeah. Yeah.
Glad to have you out there, man.
Yeah.
Snacks! And finally, after an extended break time for us, recording a secret something
Yeah.
for a secret spot in the cloud.
Yeah.
For those of you Patreon supporters, since we have the Watcher here, we got Laura in the cube and everything, and we did a little special something for
That's
those
right.
of you Patreon supporters, and we'll be actually doing more of that.
Yes.
And we will be announcing the more of that we'll be doing later.
Right. We do have Patreon plans.
That's right.
Supporter plans.
Finally, after all this time,
I know.
we figured out a way to do it without having to do any extra work.
That's exactly what we were waiting for.
Important detail.
No, really, it's all of you supporters. You're due.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Very, very due. Yeah. I was looking at the Patreon page and I was like, wow, this page is empty. So, yeah, we'll be adding content for the Patreons. So look forward to that if you are a supporter, or become one and see what we're going to be doing. So, yeah, so now we're turning back to Forbidden Archaeology, or the abridged version that we're going through, which is Hidden History of the Human Race by Michael Cremo and Richard Thompson. Also, I want to mention that Kyle and I went on Where Did the Road Go with Soraya last week, and basically had a kind of a 2-hour overview conversation about this book and everything we've been going through on it. So, first of all, Where Did the Road Go? If you don't listen to it, it's a great podcast, lots of paranormal topics. But occasionally we go on with Soraya and we talk ancient mysteries, and so we did. I think it was a really fun conversation about forbidden archaeology. So,
And it was, right up the old Tangent Cube alley.
yeah.
We kind of went all over the place, just wherever the conversation led, and it was a lot of fun.
I mean, dinosaur ghosts. That was
yeah,
really
brilliant. Just absolute brilliance coming out in the cube.
Yeah, so check that out. It should be coming out in his feed soon. It is in his Patreon feed already, I saw, but he should be releasing it sometime this week. So look for that. Okay, so we're turning to the Savona skeleton in Hidden History for the Human Race. And by the way, everybody should get this book. It is available on Kindle. That's where I have it. But you can get yourself a physical copy too if you want. Because I am not reading everything, almost, but not everything. I shouldn't be reading almost everything, but I am, because everything is awesome in this book. Okay, so we now turn our attention to another Pliocene find made at Savona, a town on the Italian Riviera, about 30 miles west of Genoa. I asked Kyle earlier how to say this, and he said he doesn't know. You were in Italy? You still don't know how to say this?
That's right.
Okay. It's probably that.
I went to Italy. I did. But I don't know how to say that one word.
I'm pretty sure that's right because there's a Genoa salami, and that's how I've always heard it said.
Okay. All right. Yeah, Genoa. In the 1850s,
You mean salami?
In the 1850s, while constructing a church, workmen discovered an anatomically modern human skeleton at the bottom of a trench 3 meters or 10 feet deep. The layer containing the skeleton was 3 to 4 million years old. Arthur Eisel communicated details of the Savona find to the members of the International Congress of Prehistoric Anthropology and Archaeology at Paris in 1867. He declared that the Savona human was contemporary with the strata in which he was found. De Mortier, however, wrote in 1883 that the Pliocene layers at Savona, deposited in shallow coastal waters, contained isolated bones of land mammals while the human skeleton was largely intact. Does this not prove, he said, that instead of the remains of a human cadaver tossing in the waves of a Pliocene sea, we are simply in the presence of a later burial of undetermined date? At the International Congress of Prehistoric Anthropology and Archaeology at Bologna, is that right? Bologna? I don't know how to say this. In 1871.
I did not think I'd be referring to lunch meat knowledge a second time for pronunciation here.
What do you think that is?
Bologna.
Bologna. Okay. In 1871, Father Deo Gracia, a priest who had been present at the time of the discovery of the human skeleton at Savona, gave a report indicating that it was not an intrusive burial. Deo Gracia, a student of paleontology, noted the body was discovered in an outstretched position, with the arms extending forward, the head slightly bent forward and down, the body very much elevated relative to the legs, like a man in the water. Can we suppose a body was buried in such a position? Is it not, on the contrary, The position of a body abandoned to the mercy of the water. The fact that the skeleton was found on the side of a rock in the bed of clay makes it probable that it was washed against this obstacle. So it was folded over a rock, face down, which is not a burial position normally. He further stated, had it been a burial, we would expect to find the upper layers mixed with the lower. The upper layers contain white quartzite sands. The result of mixing would have been the definite lightening of a closely circumscribed region of the Pliocene clay, sufficient to cause some doubts in the spectators that it was genuinely ancient, as they affirmed. The biggest and smallest cavities of the human bones are filled with compacted Pliocene clay. This could only have happened when the clay was a muddy consistency during Pliocene times. He also pointed out that the clay was now hard and dry, and also the skeleton was found at a depth of 3 meters, which is rather deep for a burial. The combination of fossils found at Savona can thus be explained as follows. The site was once covered by the shallow shoreline waters of a Pliocene sea, as shown by the presence of characteristic shells. Animals could have died on the land, and their isolated bones could have been washed into the sea and incorporated into the formation. The human bones found in natural connection could have come to rest in the same marine formation as a result of someone drowning there during the Pliocene, perhaps after the sinking of a boat. This accounts for the presence of a relatively complete human skeleton amid scattered animal bones without recourse to the hypothesis of recent intrusive burial. Keep in mind that the posture of the skeleton, face down with limbs outstretched, was like that of a drowned corpse rather than one deliberately buried.
Also, wouldn't it be really difficult to dig 2 feet, let alone 10 feet through packed clay?
Yeah.
Like, that would be incredibly hard.
Yeah, it's hard. It's very hard to dig.
It is, yeah.
Not as hard as rocks.
Right.
No.
Not as hard as rocks, but...
Especially, I mean, if you get the clay wet, it's actually pretty easy compared to, hard pack.
Right.
So, yeah.
It's heavy, but it's not hard to cut through.
So what you're saying is that guy wasn't full of baloney. Is that what you're saying?
Wow.
I was trying to think of a pepperoni joke, but I couldn't come up with it fast enough. I mean, we are in Italy. Yeah.
That's right. All right, back to Monte Hermoso. In Chapter 5, we discussed the discovery of flint tools and signs of intentional use of fire at Monte Hermoso in Argentina. Now we will consider the human bone found there, an atlas, the topmost bone of the spinal column. Santiago Pazzi, an employee of the Museum of La Plata, collected it from the early Pliocene Monte Hermosan formation during the 1880s. It did not attract much notice until years later. At that time, it was still covered by the characteristic yellow-brown lusts of the Monte Hermosan formation, which is 3 to 5 million years old. That the bone lay for years in a museum before it was recognized should not disqualify it. The Gibraltar skull lay for many years in the Garrison Museum before it was recognized as a Neanderthal specimen. Also, several Homo erectus femurs from Java were shipped to Holland in boxes of bones, and they went unrecognized and uncatalogued for several decades, but are now listed in textbooks with other accepted finds. The number of similar cases could be expanded, the point being that scientists have become aware of many fully accepted fossil finds in the same way as this atlas. After the Pliocene lust was removed, scientists carefully studied the bone. Florentino Amegano, accepting that it was truly Pliocene, assigned the atlas to an ape-like human ancestor. In his description of the bone, he identified features he thought were primitive. But Alice Hrdlicka convincingly demonstrated that the bone was actually modern in form. Like Amegano, he believed the human form should, as we proceed back in time, become more and more primitive. According to him, if a bone was of the fully modern human type, then no matter what layer it was found in, it had to be of recent origin. Such a bone's presence in an ancient stratum should always could be, indeed had to be, explained as some kind of intrusion. There is, however, another possible explanation. Human beings of the modern physiological type were living over 3 million years ago in Argentina. This is supported by the fact that the atlas showed signs of having been thoroughly embedded in sediments from the Monte Hermosan formation. All in all, Hrdlicka felt that the Monte Hermoso atlas was worthy of being dropped of necessity into obscurity. and that is exactly what happened. Otherwise, his claim that humans only recently entered the Americas would have been placed on very shaky ground. Today, there are many who will insist that the Monte Hermoso Atlas remain in the obscurity into which it was of necessity dropped. Evidence for a fully human presence 3 million or more years ago in Argentina is still not welcome in mainstream paleoanthropology. I just think it's interesting because it is in Lus. So this is a substance we've been discussing quite a bit with Randall.
Yeah.
And one possibility, this is not mainstream, but one possibility is that because of Lus's vertical structure, Randall and a few others think it's possible that it may be basically
Pluvial.
Yes, it's pluvial mud deposits. In other words, mud rain after large cataclysmic events, whether it's impacts, giant volcanoes, whatever. So you end up with a whole area, large areas covered in enormous amounts of mud that dry out into what is now called Lus, and this bone is buried in that stuff.
I also think it's pretty interesting the way that they choose to discredit individual incidences by pointing to things that, if applied everywhere, would completely destroy everything they've ever said.
Yes.
Like, well, what you're saying is that intrusive fossils can occur, so then you have no idea when anything was ever, and everything's all mixed together, and dinosaurs lived at the time with cavemen and vice versa, because it's all mixed around and you know nothing.
Yeah.
That's going to be a new game I play with Scriptards. And they give me a, well, it can't be because of, all right, let's see what happens when we take that everywhere.
Yes, that's right. Apply it all the way across. Yeah, exactly. All right, the Miramar jaw. In 1921, M.A. Vignati reported that a human lower jaw with 2 molars was discovered in late Pliocene Chapadmalal Formation at Miramar in Argentina. Previously, stone tools and a mammalian bone with an arrowhead embedded in it had been discovered at this site, which we discussed earlier. Remember that? They found the mammoth bone with the arrowhead stuck in it.
I mean, I remember hearing that, but
Yeah.
I didn't know it was.
Yeah, we discussed the tools found at this same site is all it is. And then there's with these tools, this jaw was also discovered.
Oh.
The jaw was discovered by Lorenzo Perotti, a museum collector. E. Bowman reported that Perotti found the jaw and its attached molars embedded in the barranca at great depth in the Chapadmalalan strata at about the level of the sea. The jaw would thus be about 2 to 3 million years old. Bowman, however, was skeptical. He stated, "The newspapers published bombastic articles about the most ancient human remains in the world, but all who examined the molars found them to be identical to the corresponding molars of modern human beings." Bowman took it for granted that the fully human nature of the Miramar jaw fragment unequivocally ensured its recent date, but nothing Bowman said excludes the possibility that the Miramar fossil demonstrates a fully human presence in the Pliocene of Argentina. So yeah, again, it's weird how they word this sometimes, but basically he's saying that because it's modern looking, it must be a modern.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Calaveras skull.
And I understand that argument, right? But in this field, it's not. I don't see it as legitimate, right? There are some fields, like physics, for example, where there's pretty well established laws that are observed all the time, right? And so if there's something supposedly that occurs that breaks all those laws, then you can say, well, it had to be something else.
Okay.
Right? I understand that that's a legitimate argument. But in this field where human development is really based on a few scant artifacts discovered in various places, and then of course all the contextual dating and everything, it just seems like you shouldn't be so rigid.
Yeah.
Right?
And then also in physics, when they find that anomaly, they acknowledge it, and somebody goes off studying, trying to explain it in terms of, like, we had this anomalous reading, we now know what it was because this happened. They don't just make it disappear and never talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll look very hard for equipment failures or some
Right.
test problem or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
You know, Like this happened with the neutrinos going faster than light thing that they detected. Was it neutrinos? Yeah, something went faster than light. Remember they detected and they decided it was a wiring issue between. This happened. I can't remember what lab it was, but it was kind of big in the news. Like, holy crap, they detected something that moved faster than light. And lots of people were skeptical, and they're like, well, that breaks all these laws. And then they did a bunch of tests and they eventually said, well, there was a wiring problem. Like some fiber optics cable wasn't plugged in properly or something like that, right? But, so it's like, yes, they look for equipment failures first.
Like you want to exhaust,
Yeah.
all of the other possibilities, right?
Yeah.
And I think they do a pretty good job of that.
Yeah. So I agree with that. With this, like you should look. If you find find a modern skull, like totally morphologically modern human skull in some surprisingly ancient context, you should try to figure out, well, could this have gotten down here intrusively?
Right. That's something you should look at.
But if you exhaust that possibility and you realize, well, no, and the geologist who was there was looking at this is saying, no, this is like, it's definitely in this strata. It's, then you don't continue to say, well, it has to be modern because it's modern in morphology.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's my point. I don't feel like there's as good of a reason to be rigid on that assumption, basically. Yeah. As you would normally be with, say, certain laws of physics where these laws are being broken. Yeah. It's a lot more, in other words, there's a lot more evidence for the laws of physics than there are for the evolutionary development of Homo sapiens, right?
And you can review that evidence a lot of times with physics because it's ongoing current.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Run experiments and you can test the data. You can't test it on a thing that's already happened that you know nothing about.
Which is why you shouldn't be so rigid in making those assumptions, right? There's all like, well, no.
Temple,
it must be recent.
Yeah. All right, Calaveras skull. In Chapter 5, we discussed the numerous stone implements discovered in the auriferous gravels of the Sierra Nevada mountains of California. Human bones were also found in these gravels, which range from 9 million to 55 million years old. So I want to point out this, like, if some of these finds are early tertiary, then we're talking about right after the end of the dinosaur age, right? The KT event is Cretaceous Tertiary. Mm-hmm. So if you're finding something in early tertiary sediments, you're basically talking about right after the impact event that killed off the dinosaurs, which is interesting. If they're finding human artifacts that far back, you're basically almost putting humans all the way back with the dinosaurs. So can't have that. Can't be. So in February 1866, Mr. Madison, the principal owner of the mine on Bald Hill near Angels Creek in Calaveras County, removed a skull from a layer of gravel 130 feet below the surface. The gravel was near the bedrock, underneath several distinct layers of volcanic material. Volcanic eruptions began in this region during the Oligocene, continued through the Miocene, and ended in the Pliocene. Since the skull occurred near the bottom of the sequence of interspersed gravel and lava layers at Bald Hill, it would seem likely that the gravel in which the skull was found was older than the Pliocene and perhaps much older. After finding the skull, Madison later carried it to Mr. Scribner, an agent of Wells Fargo and Company's Express at Angels. His clerk, Mr. Matthews, cleaned off part of the incrustations covering most of the fossil. Upon recognizing that it was part of a human skull, he sent it to Dr. Jones, who lived in the nearby village of Murphy's and was an enthusiastic collector of such items. Then Dr. Jones wrote to the Office of the Geological Survey in San Francisco, and after receiving a reply, he forwarded the skull to this office, where it was examined by J.D. Whitney, the state geologist. Whitney at once made the journey to Murphy's and Angels, where he personally questioned Mr. Madison, who confirmed the report that was given by Dr. Jones. Both Scribner and Jones were personally known to Whitney and were regarded by him as trustworthy. On July 16th in 1866, Whitney presented to the California Academy of Sciences a report on this skull, affirming that it was found in Pliocene strata, and the skull caused a great sensation in America. According to Whitney, The religious press in this country took the matter up and were quite unanimous in declaring this skull to be a hoax. Whitney noted that the hoax stories did not arise until after his discovery was publicized widely in newspapers. Some of the hoax stories were propagated not by newspaper writers, but by scientists such as William H. Holmes of the Smithsonian Institution. During a visit to Calaveras County, he gathered testimony from some people who were acquainted with Mr. Scribner and Dr. Jones, and this testimony raised the possibility that the skull examined by Whitney was not a genuine tertiary fossil. But there is a problem with the hoax hypothesis. There are many versions. Some say religious miners planted the skull to deceive the scientists. Some say the miners planted the skull to deceive another miner. Some say a genuine skull was found by Madison and later a different skull was given to Whitney. Some say Madison's friends from a nearby town planted the skull as a practical joke. This contradictory testimony casts doubt on the hoax concept. So It's funny because Whitney is saying the religious press decided this was a hoax, not the scientific people. The religious people didn't like this. I guess I find that interesting because today it's the other way around. Scientists all think it's a hoax, and it's the 6K Christians that point to these objects as disproof of evolution and the ancient Earth. It's young Earth creationists, I should say, right?
Well, I mean, there's no commonalities at all between the Church of Science and other non-religious things that are...
Yeah, maybe Whitney meant religious press in a different way. I don't know.
Could be.
But it's funny because he's saying the religious press in this country took up the matter and were quite unanimous in declaring it to be a hoax. And then later...
But this was in the 1880s?
Yeah, 1866.
I don't think he was meaning that in a different way.
Right. But then right later it says, some say religious miners planted the skull to deceive the scientists. So this is confusing.
Religious miners, do they have their own union? This is a widely known group of miners who go about planting things to...
Yeah, they...
Well, I think that generally
they worship the deep gnomes.
I think generally speaking, this is just that the assumptions are about, the disagreements between the religious community and the scientific community.
Yeah.
Right. So
but it's in this case, they're all in agreement that it's a hoax. Whitney is standing out as a scientist. Remember, because this whole thing was hated by the Smithsonian people, and most scientists were like, no, this can't be right. Okay. So it's weird because in this case you have the religious people, if the reports are correct, and the scientific community in total agreement that this skull must be a hoax.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you implying that if there's only two groups with polar opposite views, they can do whatever they want to make anything disappear and people will not know?
I'm implying that if both of those groups both think the thing is a hoax, it's definitely not.
Yeah, that's true. Double negative. It's math.
That's right. And yeah, I think that their second point here is that what casts doubt on the hoax idea is how many different versions of the hoax story came out.
Right.
Everybody was making up some story for it to be a hoax, and they're all different. So
one version of the scientific find,
yeah.
Multiple versions of the hoax idea.
Yeah. After visiting Calaveras County, Holmes examined the actual Calaveras skull at the Peabody Museum in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and concluded that the skull was never carried and broken in a tertiary torrent, that it never came from the old gravels in the Madison mine, and that it does not in any way represent a tertiary race of men. Some testimony supporting this conclusion comes from persons who examined the matrix of pebbles and earth in which the Calaveras skull had been discovered. Dr. F.W. Putnam of Harvard University's Peabody Museum of Natural History said the skull did not bear any traces of gravel from the mines. William J. Sinclair of the University of California also personally examined the skull and said the material attached to it was not gravel from the gold mine. He thought it was the kind of material one might find in a cave where Indians sometimes placed bodies. On the other hand, Holmes reported, Dr. D.H. Dahl states that while in San Francisco in 1866, he compared the material attached to the skull with portions of the gravel from the mine and that they were alike in all essentials. And W.O. Ayres, writing in The American Naturalist in 1882, stated, I saw it and examined it carefully at the time when it first reached Professor Whitney's hands. It was not only encrusted with sand and gravel, but its cavities were crowded with the same material, and that material was of a peculiar sort, a sort which I had occasion to know thoroughly. It was, said Ayres, the gold-bearing gravel found in the mines, not a recent cave deposit.
So, quick side note for non-Spanish speaking listeners, the word calavera is skull in Spanish, and Calaveras County was it was basically founded in 1850, 30 years prior to this. So,
wow,
I wonder
that's
how
a little strange.
often they were finding skulls in Skull County before this happened.
In mines in Skull County.
Wow. Brilliant, Watcher.
I do what I can.
Calavera. All right, so regarding the skull, Ayres noted, it has been said that it is a modern skull, which has been encrusted after a few years of internment. This assertion, however, is never made by anyone knowing the region. The gravel has not the slightest tendency toward an action of that sort. The hollows of the skull were crowded with the solidified and cemented sand in such a way as they could have been only by its being driven into them in a semi-fluid mass, a condition the gravels have never had since they were first laid down. Whitney, in his original description of the fossil, observed that the Calaveras skull was highly fossilized. This is certainly consistent with great age. However, as Holmes pointed out, it is also true that bones can become fossilized over the course of a few hundred or 1,000 years. Yet, geologist George Becker reported in 1891, I find that many good judges are fully persuaded of the authenticity of the Calaveras skull, and Messrs. Clarence King, O.C. Marsh, F.W. Putnam, and W.H. Dahl have each assured me that this bone was found in place in the gravel beneath the lava. Becker added that this statement was made with the permission of the authorities named. Clarence King, as mentioned previously, was a famous geologist attached to the U.S. Geological Survey. O.C. Marsh, a paleontologist, was a pioneer dinosaur fossil hunter and served as president of the National Academy of Sciences from 1883 to 1895. But F.W. Putnam of Harvard's Peabody Museum, as we have seen, later changed his mind, saying that the matrix of the skull appeared to be a cave deposit. Can it really be said with certainty that the Calaveras skull was either genuine or a hoax? The evidence is so contradictory and confusing that although the skull could have come from an Indian burial cave, we might regard with suspicion anyone who comes forward with any kind of definite conclusion. The reader may pause to contemplate what steps one would take to make one's own determination of the true age of this skull. It should, however, be kept in mind that the Calaveras skull was not an isolated discovery. Great numbers of stone implements were found in nearby deposits of similar age. And, as we shall see, additional human skeletal remains were also uncovered in the same region. In light of this, the Calaveras skull cannot be dismissed without the most careful consideration. As Sir Arthur Keith put it in 1928, the story of the Calaveras skull cannot be passed over. It is the bogey which haunts the student of early man, taxing the powers of belief of every expert almost to the breaking point.
Yep, good call, Watcher. Many other artifacts have been found, or not artifacts, but bones found in the area in similar deposits.
Yeah, so a little bit further reading. The Calaveras River, which was named by a Spaniard via Mexico, exploring right at the turn of the century, 1800s, found lots of what he assumed to be native bones. And the standard model says it's because of some pandemic caused by interaction with the Spaniards in the missions along the coast. So they all got sick and then went to the river and laid down and died. Standard model.
That's why they call it Calaveras.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're right. There were lots of skulls.
Yes.
Okay.
Of speculative origin.
Yes. Well, we're up on time here, basically. We can take a break.
All right,
Anything
folks.
else to say about that? Man, that case is fascinating to me, and there's more to come from the gold country there. So, next segment.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
SnakeSkins! 33.3% brain expansion guaranteed for all you chimpanzees out there here on Brothers of the Serpent podcast. And we're going to jump back into this, but I forgot last week and almost forgot this week to do the crypto update. So yes, right now Bitcoin is at $37,629.92. Yeah, it's dropped a lot.
Buying time.
Yeah. And Ethereum is at $2,691.67. So there you go. Crypto update. Buy now. Okay, so back into hidden history of the human race here, and we have more human fossils from the California gold country. On January 1st, 1873, the president of the Boston Society of Natural History read extracts from a letter by Dr. C.F. Winslow about a discovery of human bones at Table Mountain. The find was made in 1855 or 1856, and the details were communicated by Winslow to Captain David B. Akey, who had witnessed it, or Aki. The discovery took place about 10 years before J.D. Whitney first reported on the famous Calaveras skull. Winslow stated, "During my visit to the mining camp, I have become acquainted with Captain David B. Akey, formerly commanding officer of a California volunteer company, and well known to many persons of note in that state, and in the course of my conversation with him, I learned that in 1855 and 1856 he was engaged with other miners in running drifts into Table Mountain at the depth of about 200 feet from its brow in search of placer gold. He states that in a tunnel run into the mountain at a distance of about 50 feet from that upon which he was employed, and at the same level, a complete human skeleton was found and taken out by miners personally known to him. He did not see the bones in place, but he saw them after they were brought down from the tunnel to a neighboring cabin. All the bones of the skeleton were apparently brought down in the arms of miners and placed in a box, and it was the opinion of those present that the skeleton must have been perfect as it laid in the drift. He does not know what became of the bones, but can affirm to the truth of this discovery, and said that the bones were those of a human skeleton in an excellent state of preservation. The skull was broken in on the right temple, where there was a small hole, as if a part of the skull was gone. But he cannot tell whether this fracture occurred before the excavation or was made by the miners. He thinks that the depth from the surface at which this skeleton was found was about 200 feet, and from 180 to 200 feet from the opening or face of the tunnel. The bones were in a moist condition found among the gravel and very near the bedrock, and water was running out of the tunnel. There was a petrified pine tree from 60 to 80 feet in length and between 2 and 3 feet in diameter at the butt laying near this skeleton. Mr. Aki went into the tunnel with the miners, and they pointed out to him the place where the skeleton was found. He saw the tree in place and broke specimens from it. He can't remember the name of the tunnel, but it was about a quarter of a mile east of the Rough and Ready tunnel and opposite Turner's Flat, which is another well-known point. He cannot tell the sex of the skeleton, but it was of medium size. The bones were all together and not separated when found. The gravel just above the bedrock at Table Mountain, where the skeleton was found, is said to be between 33 and 55 million years old. This must be the age of the skeleton unless it was introduced into the gravels at a later time, and we are not aware of any evidence indicating such an intrusion. Dr. Winslow did not find any of the bones of the skeleton seen by Aki, but in another case, Winslow did collect some fossils which he sent to museums in the eastern United States. A skull fragment, characterized by Dr. J. Wyman, a leading craniologist, as human, was dispatched by Winslow to the Museum of the Natural History Society of Boston. The fossil was labeled as follows: from a shaft in Table Mountain, 180 feet below the surface, in gold drift, among rolled stones and near mastodon debris.
Wow.
Overlying strata of basaltic compactness and hardness. Found July 1857. Given to Reverend C. F. Winslow by Honorable Paul K. Hubbs in August of 1857. Another fragment from the same skull and similarly labeled was sent to the Museum of the Philadelphia Academy of Natural Sciences. Upon learning of this discovery, J.D. Whitney began his own investigation. He learned that Hubbs was a well-known citizen of California and a former state superintendent of education. Whitney got from Hubbs a detailed written account of the discovery, which occurred in the Valentine Shaft south of Shaw's Flat. Whitney stated, "The essential facts are that the Valentine Shaft was vertical, that it was boarded up to the top so that nothing could have fallen in from the surface during the working underground, which was carried on in the gravel channel exclusively after the shaft had been sunk. There can be no doubt that the specimen came from the drift in the channel under Table Mountain, as affirmed by Mr. Hubbs." The skull fragment was found in a horizontal mine shaft or drift leading from the main vertical shaft at a depth of 180 feet from the surface. Hubbs stated that he saw the portion of the skull immediately after its being taken out of the sluice into which it had been shoveled. Adhering to the bone was the characteristic gold-bearing gravel. A stone mortar was found in the same mine. William J. Sinclair suggested tunnels from other miners had possibly intersected those of the Valentine mine. This might explain how the skull fragment got deep below the surface. But Sinclair admitted that during his 1902 visit, he was not even able to find the shaft. This means he had no direct evidence that the mine shafts were connected to any others. His objection was simply a weak and highly speculative attempt to discredit a discovery he opposed on theoretical grounds. The gravels containing the skull fragment lay 180 feet below the surface and beneath the lava cap of Table Mountain, which is 9 million years old. The oldest gravels below the lava are 55 million years old, so the skull fragment could be, thus, from 9 to 55 million years old. When examining a collection of stone artifacts belonging to Dr. Snell, J.D. Whitney noticed the presence of a human jaw. The jaw and artifacts all came from gold-bearing gravels beneath the lava cap of Table Mountain. The jaw measured 5.5 inches across, which is within the normal human range. Whitney remarked that all the human fossils uncovered in the gold mining region, including this one, were of the anatomically modern type. The gravels from which the jaw came could be anywhere from 9 to 55 million years old. And I'm really interested in the complete skeleton next to the tree. That one's fascinated me for a long time.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah.
I'm curious, just like, are they still mining under there, and are they still finding, fossilized trees and stuff in these riverbeds? I mean, that's just awesome. Like whatever was in that riverbed is preserved under that mountain or that mesa or whatever it is.
And they found mastodon material.
Yeah.
So
it's also interesting how, as a view overall, right, of like, if you look way back over 100 years into history, well, people were uneducated and they believed all these crazy things that they found in mines all the time, and all the miners found them, and they believed them because they were literally right there in front of them. But that's completely lost for us now. When you look back, it was all superstitious mumbo jumbo. Well, no, dude, they found giant bones all through this gold mine. That's why they believed in it.
Yeah.
It's interesting how the removal of the fact and the observation in such a short period of time can turn into complete belief that it's just some superstitious nonsense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also found, like I was just saying, I found it interesting that there was mammoth material. Mastodon.
Why is that?
Well, because
it's cool.
Yeah.
But
mastodons are also not that old. But they are contemporary with humans.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So I find that interesting. It's like not only do you have human tools and human bones, modern ones.
It's intrusive mastodon burial. They buried them all in giant, deep pits. That's how they decided to bury their loved ones, the mastodons with their tusks.
Yeah. So does that imply that just the geological dating of this is totally wrong?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's definitely part of it. You know, I think it's both.
Yeah. Okay. Whitney also reported several discoveries from Placer County. In particular, he gave this account of human bones that were found in the Missouri Tunnel. In this tunnel, under the lava, 2 bones had been found, which were pronounced to be human. One was said to be a leg bone. Of the character of the other, nothing was remembered. The above information was obtained by Mr. Goodyear from Mr. Samuel Bowman, of whose intelligence and truthfulness the writer has received good accounts from a personal friend well acquainted with him. At that time, this doctor was one of the best-known physicians of the region. Okay, so there was a doctor that investigated it. According to information provided by the California Division of Mines and Geology, the deposits from which the bones were taken are over 8.7 million years old. In 1853, a physician named Dr. H. H. Boyce discovered human bones at Clay Hill in El Dorado County in California. In 1870, Dr. Boyce wrote to Whitney, who had requested information. I purchased an interest in a claim on this hill, on condition that it prospected sufficiently well to warrant working it. The owner and myself accordingly proceeded to sink a shaft for the purpose of working it. It was while doing so that we discovered the bones to which you refer. Clay Hill is one of a series of elevations which constitute the watershed between Placerville Creek and Big Canyon, and is capped with a stratum of basaltic lava, some 8 feet thick. Beneath this, there are some 30 feet of sand, gravel, and clay. It was in this clay that we came across the bones. While emptying the tub, I saw some pieces of material which, on examination, I discovered were pieces of bones, and on further search, I found the scapula, the clavicle, and parts of the first, second, and third ribs of the right side of a human skeleton. They were quite firmly cemented together, but on exposure to the air, they began to crumble, and we made no further discoveries. According to Whitney, Boyce stated there could be no mistake about the character of the bones and that he had made a special study of human anatomy. So it's interesting, too, that, you know, in some cases they just completely disintegrate.
Okay, I was going to bring this up because I don't hear this anymore, ever. That somebody finds some, you know, fossilized bone and after it's exposed to the air, it just crumples into dust. Like, you don't ever hear that anymore. And I just wonder about that. I've always been just like, what is this?
To me, that implies that it's not lithified somehow. They found it in clay, which seems like that should be able to lithify it, right?
Yeah, but it's like the way it's always talked about, it's like when it first comes out, it's, you know, not crumbly.
Right.
And then after a while of being exposed to the air,
yeah,
it crumbles. I'm just like, I don't know about that.
You don't buy it?
I'm not buying it. Not buying it. This should have been crumbly from the get-go.
Okay.
That's just, I don't know. Maybe there's some process I don't understand, but I don't ever hear that anymore.
Yeah. Well, it is true of, I don't know if this correlates at all, but it is true with like very old other organic artifacts. Like this is, for example, the reason why very ancient manuscripts have to be kept in special conditions.
Like they let it dry out and then it crumbles or something. Like when it was moist, it was still good.
Another part of it, after quick research, if say the minerals within it that cause the lithification have high content of iron, exposure to the air will cause rapid oxidation, and that'll cause deterioration of the sample. But it doesn't say specifically that it just turns into dust.
Yeah, and maybe that's what they mean. It just becomes brittle or something, but I don't know. You just hear it. You know, I've heard it in many of these accounts. It's like, yeah, we found this thing. It was awesome. And then it just crumbled into dust.
Yeah.
Really?
And it never seems to be a thing that happens when it's something that's absolute certain canon part of the narrative. It's, there's this thing, but you can't really rely on it because it's a dusty fossil that just poofed and then, you know.
That's a great question. I wonder if there have been accepted finds that crumbled into dust.
Yeah.
William J. Sinclair persistently attempted to cast whatever doubt he could on this discovery. He said he could not locate the clay because the slope was covered with rocky debris, and he further stated, The impression conveyed is that the skeleton found by Dr. Boyce was at a depth of 38 feet in undisturbed strata under 8 feet of so-called basalt. There is nothing, however, in the letter to show that this was the section passed through in sinking the Boyce shaft.
So-called basalt?
Because of the ambiguity about the exact location of the shaft, Sinclair thus concluded. The skeleton may have been found in such a place and at such a depth in the clay that the possibility of recent interment would have to be considered. So another thing is, like, this guy is... If he's trying to skirp it, why doesn't he skirp that? It does seem to be that it must be a thing, right? That they crumbled it into dust.
That's a good point, yeah.
Also,
He has actually going out there trying to find the site, not saying like, well, it crumbled into dust is bullshit, right?
well, no,
He's out there
the
trying to
reason
find
it has to crumble into dust is it's hard to sweep under the rug unless it crumbles into dust first.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, maybe this is just a thing that happened often back in the day, and this is part of like what archaeologists have overcome with their methods.
Maybe, yeah.
Or maybe it happens all the time and they just don't talk about it because they don't want to cast doubt on their own conclusions.
I don't know.
Who knows? We could probably find out if
Yeah,
this still happens.
yeah, this is something we must find out.
Yeah. The points raised by Sinclair are valid, and we agree that there are reasons to doubt the antiquity of the skeletal remains found at Clay Hill. Yet, the presence of so much rocky debris that Sinclair was not able to gain access to the stratum of clay at the base of the hill argues against, rather than for, the possibility of a recent burial into the clay. Also, if there was a recent burial, it is peculiar that so few bones were recovered. This brings us to the end of our review of fossil human skeletal remains from the gold-bearing gravels of California. Despite the imperfections of the evidence, one thing is certain. Human bones were found in the tertiary gravels, dating as far back as the Eocene. How the bones got there is open to question. The reports of the discoveries are sometimes vague and inconclusive, yet they are suggestive of something other than pranks by miners or recent intrusive burials by Indians. The presence of numerous stone tools, incontestably of human manufacture, in the same formations lends additional credibility to the finds. In an address to the American Association for the Advancement of Science, delivered in August of 1879, O.C. Marsh, president of the association and one of America's foremost paleontologists, said about tertiary man, "The proof offered on this point by Professor J.D. Whitney in his recent work is so strong, and his careful, conscientious method of investigation so well known, that his conclusions seem irresistible. At present, the known facts indicate that American beds containing human remains and works of man are as old as the Pliocene of Europe. The existence of man in the tertiary period seems now fairly established."
Wow, that's amazing. No more.
Right. Extremely old finds in Europe. More evidence for human beings in the early and middle tertiary comes from Europe. According to Gabriel de Mortier, Mr. Something, Quiqueres, reported the discovery of a skeleton at Delemont in Switzerland in ferruginous clays said to be late Eocene. About this find, de Mortier said, simply said one should be suspicious of human skeletons found with the bones in natural connection. De Mortier further stated that one should be cautious about a similarly complete skeleton found by Garrigou in Miocene strata at Midi de France. It is possible, however, that these skeletons were from individuals buried during the Eocene or Miocene periods. A burial does not necessarily have to be recent. The truly frustrating thing about finds such as these is we are not able to get more information about them. We find only a brief mention by an author bent on discrediting them. Because such finds seemed doubtful to scientists like de Mortier, they went undocumented and uninvestigated and were quickly forgotten. How many such finds have been made? We may never know. In contrast, finds which do conform to accepted theories are thoroughly investigated, extensively reported, and safely enshrined in museums. Extreme anomalies. As we have seen, some scientists believe ape men existed as far back as the Miocene and Eocene. A few bold thinkers even proposed that fully human beings were alive during those periods. But now, we are going to proceed into times still more remote. Since most scientists had trouble with tertiary humans, we can just imagine how difficult it would have been for them to give any serious consideration to the cases we are about to discuss. We ourselves were tempted not to mention such finds as these because they seem unbelievable. But the result of such a policy would be that we discuss evidence only for things we already believe. And unless our current beliefs represent reality in total, this would not be a wise thing to do. In December of 1862, the following brief but intriguing report appeared in a journal called The Geologist. In Macoupin County in Illinois, the bones of a man were recently found on a coal bed, capped with 2 feet of slate rock, 90 feet below the surface of the earth. The bones, when found, were covered with a crust or coating of hard, glossy matter, as black as coal itself, but, when scraped away, left the bones white and natural. The coal in which this skeleton was found is at least 286 million years old and might be as much as 320 million years old.
Wow.
Our final example of anomalous pre-tertiary evidence are not in the category of fossil human bones, but rather in the category of fossil human-like footprints. Professor W.G. Burroughs, head of the Department of Geology at Berea College in Berea, Kentucky, reported in 1938. During the beginning of the Upper Carboniferous period, creatures that walked on their 2 hind legs and had human-like feet left tracks on a sand beach in Rockcastle County in Kentucky. This was the period known as the Age of Amphibians, when animals moved about on 4 legs or more rarely hopped, and their feet did not have a human appearance. But in Rockcastle, Jackson, and several other counties in Kentucky, as well as in places from Pennsylvania to Missouri inclusive, creatures that had feet strangely human in appearance and walked on 2 hind legs did exist. The writer has proved the existence of these creatures in Kentucky. With the cooperation of Dr. C.W. Gilmore, curator of the Vertebrate Paleontology at Smithsonian Institution, it has been shown that similar creatures lived in Pennsylvania and Missouri. The Upper Carboniferous, or the Pennsylvanian, began about 320 million years ago. It is thought that the first animals capable of walking erect, the Pseudosuchian thecodonts, appeared around 210 million years ago. These lizard-like creatures, capable of running on their hind legs, would not have left tail marks since they carried their tails aloft, but their feet did not look at all like those of human beings. Rather, they resembled those of birds. Scientists say the first appearance of ape-like beings was not until 37 million years ago, and it was not until around 4 million years ago that most scientists would expect to find footprints anything like those reported by Burroughs from the Carboniferous of Kentucky. Burroughs stated, each footprint has 5 toes and a distinct arch. The toes are spread apart like those of a human being who has never worn shoes. Giving more details about the print, Burroughs stated, the foot curves back like a human foot to a human-appearing heel. David L. Bushnell, an ethnologist with the Smithsonian Institution, suggested the prints were carved by Indians. In ruling out this hypothesis, Dr. Burroughs used a microscope to study the prints and noted, the sand grains within the tracks are closer together than the sand grains of the rock just outside the tracks, due to the pressure of the creature's feet. The sandstone adjacent to many of the tracks is uprolled due to the damp, loose sand having been pushed up around the foot as the foot sank into the sand. These facts led Burroughs to conclude that the human-like footprints were formed by compression into the soft, wet sand before it consolidated into rock some 300 million years ago. Burroughs' observations were confirmed by other investigators. According to Kent Previat, Burroughs also consulted a sculptor. Previat wrote in 1953, the sculptor said that carving in that kind of sandstone could not have been done without leaving artificial marks. Enlarged photomicrographs and enlarged infrared photographs failed to reveal any indications of carving or cutting of any kind. Burroughs himself stopped short of claiming that the prints were made by humans, but his presentation leaves one with a strong impression that they were human. When asked about them, Burroughs said, they look human. That is what makes them especially interesting.
Smart guy. When was this again? I mean, they're using more advanced technology to analyze them. So
and apparently there's a profession called ethnologist, which sounds like a fairly recent development.
Yeah, so it was reported first in 1938.
Okay, yeah.
But they were doing tests on it up until the 50s, 53. And yeah, they've been writing about it. So yeah, this seems to me like, I don't know. When I was reading through this, I was like, wow, this is really interesting and strong evidence. And like the only Skirptard could say like, maybe Indians carved them. I mean, that was,
based upon the prevalence of carved footprints and handprints and whatnot, like a walk of fame that we find all throughout.
Yeah.
The artifacts from different native tribes.
Well, based on their inability to conceive that this could possibly be human footprints, or their inability to conceive that strata must not be that old.
Yeah.
Because this is Carboniferous material. 300 million years old.
Yeah.
It's like...
So if you bring, either way you're screwed.
Yeah.
If you make that material young enough to have human-like footprints in it, you've really messed up the timeline.
Yeah.
And if you push humans back or human-like creatures back far enough,
all the way back to the only thing that was around were salamanders.
Yeah.
I've never really looked at it in those terms, but that's actually a really telling statement. It's in an organic layer.
Yeah.
The stuff around it is not like carbon absent mineral. There's organic material everywhere.
Yeah. They're calling it the Carboniferous. Let's see. Upper Carboniferous, the Pennsylvanian period is what it is. Began 320 million years ago. And they call this the coal age. This is when a bunch of coal was generated.
Yeah, I was going to say the
age as a lot of the
Pennsylvanian
coal.
layers.
Yeah.
All coal.
Right. So lots of biomass.
Yeah.
But the tracks were in a sandy beach that is now lithified.
Sorry, that just reminds me of Utah. Liquid rock sand dunes.
Yeah. Exactly. And yeah, the description that this guy gives of the prints, you're just like, okay, it sounds human. And then they're like, maybe they're carved. And he's like, no, look, the print has rolled sand around it, and it's compressed. And then they took infrared and other microphotography, and there's no signs of any carving. And he's like, they look human. That's what makes them really interesting. Mainstream science reacted predictably to any suggestion that the prints were made by humans. Geologist Albert G. Ingalls, writing in 1940 in Scientific American, said, if man, or even his ape ancestor, or even that ape ancestor's early mammalian ancestor, existed as far back as in the Carboniferous period in any shape, then the whole science of geology is so completely wrong that all the geologists will resign their jobs and take up truck driving.
Fantastic.
Hence, for the present, at least science rejects the attractive explanation that man made these mysterious plinths in the mud of the Carboniferous with his feet.
So
because they would all have to lose their jobs, they reject
It's
these
wrong.
prints.
Yeah.
if this is right, then all of us are wrong. So we state it must not be right.
Exactly.
Thank you for coming to my press conference.
That's what he says. People of Springfield. Ingalls suggested the prints were made by some as yet unknown...
You probably screw up truck driving is all I got to say.
Yeah. Made by some as yet unknown kind of amphibian. But today's scientists do not really take the amphibian theory seriously. Human-sized, carboniferous, bipedal amphibians do not fit into the accepted scheme of evolution much better than carboniferous human beings. They wreak havoc with our ideas of early amphibians, requiring a host of evolutionary developments that we know nothing about. Ingalls wrote, what science does know is that, anyway, unless 2 and 2 are 7, and unless the Sumerians had airplanes and radios and listened to Amos and Andy, these prints were not made by any Carboniferous period man. I mean, maybe the Sumerians had airplanes.
Also, it can't be an amphibian. We put on flippers to get in the water. Like, the foot shape just doesn't work out at all.
Yeah. In 1983, the Moscow News gave a brief but intriguing report on what appeared to be a human footprint in 150 million year old Jurassic rock, next to a giant 3-toed dinosaur footprint.
Misinformation from the KGB.
The discovery occurred in the Turkmen Republic in what was then the southeastern USSR. Professor Russian guy, corresponding member of the Turkmen SSR Academy of Sciences, said that although the print resembled a human footprint, there was no conclusive proof that it was made by a human being. This discovery has not received much attention, but then, given the current mindset of the scientific community, such neglect is to be expected. We only know of a few cases of such extremely anomalous discoveries, but considering that many such discoveries probably go unreported, we wonder how many there might actually be.
Yeah.
So that's another example of the taking of a concept of proof from like a legal setting versus field science. Conclusive proof would be finding a corpse with the foot in the print that lets you know definitely that foot made that print, and therefore you know conclusively that it happened.
Yeah.
Everything else is conjecture. So if it's all conjecture, you can't point to one thing and go, well, that's a ridiculous amount of conjecture used there, whereas mine is reasonable.
Yep.
But they do it all the time, and we don't call it into question, except for now.
I've never heard of those prints, though.
Me either.
Yeah, me either.
I mean, you think like a lot
Can we go see them?
Yeah, I know. Like, I don't know. I'll have to look into that. I mean, but he says that
Or is there a new carving there? No. They've been carved out.
I mean, it said multiple states, right? That was the other thing that was crazy about that.
I just got a mental picture of like a giant dinosaur footprint, but when you look real close, down in the center of it is like 3 human footprints.
Yeah. No, I'm not talking about
Carved out around it.
Not talking about the Russian one. I'm talking about these prints in Kentucky.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
But it says Kentucky and Pennsylvania and Missouri.
So like all through the quote unquote Pennsylvania layer and
Yeah.
these coal deposit, and it makes sense. Coal miners find them everywhere throughout all these mines through this time period.
Yeah, he says in Rockcastle and Jackson and several other counties in Kentucky, as well as places from Pennsylvania and Missouri.
What was the time roughly of when all these were being found?
1938 was the report.
Okay.
But yeah, the biggest, and these tracks it's not a single print. It's strings of tracks. Yeah. Left tracks on a sand beach in Rockcastle County in Kentucky.
Yeah, but is this exposed?
I don't know.
Or they dug this up?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because, I mean, that sandstone is, I mean, it erodes so fast, it would be hard to believe that they were just exposed.
Yeah.
You know, it had to be excavated or something.
I think this is a great band name, too. The Pseudosuchian Thegodonts. That's a fantastic band name. The name of the first upright lizard? Pseudosuchian Thegodonts.
That's definitely a prog rock band for sure.
All right, let's take a break, and then we'll get into part 2 of this book, looking at the accepted evidence and how much bullshit it is.
All right. Sounds good. Was a great joke. You guys missed it. It was during the break. This is the final segment already. Fastest 2 hours in podcasting as usual.
Yep.
And all right, time to get into the
part 2.
The accepted evidence.
Yes. So the first one here is Java Man, which has been brought up many times throughout the book. So at the end of the 19th century, a consensus was building within an influential portion of the scientific community that human beings of the modern type had existed as far back as the Pliocene and Miocene periods, and perhaps even earlier. Anthropologist Frank Spencer stated in 1984, "From accumulating skeletal evidence, it appeared as if the modern human skeleton extended far back in time, an apparent fact which led many workers to either abandon or modify their views on human evolution." One such apostate was Alfred Russel Wallace. Wallace shares with Darwin the credit for having discovered evolution by natural selection. Darwin thought Wallace was committing heresy of the worst sort, but Spencer noted that Wallace's challenge to evolutionary doctrine lost some of its potency as well as a few of its supporters when news began circulating of the discovery of a remarkable hominid fossil in Java. Considering the striking way in which the Java man fossils were employed in discrediting and suppressing evidence for the great antiquity of the modern human form, we shall now review their history. Eugene Dubois and the Pithecanthropus. Past the Javanese village of Trinil, a road ends on a high bank overlooking the Solo River. Here one encounters a small stone monument marked with an arrow pointing towards a sand pit on the opposite bank. The monument also carries a cryptic German inscription, PE 175MONO 1891/93, indicating that Pithecanthropus erectus was found 175 meters east-northeast from this spot during the years 1891 to 1893. The discoverer of Pithecanthropus erectus was Eugene Dubois, born in Eisgen, Holland in 1858, the year before Darwin published The Origin of Species. Although the son of a devout Dutch Catholic, he was fascinated by the idea of evolution, especially as it applied to the question of human origins. After studying medicine and natural history at the University of Amsterdam, Dubois became a lecturer in anatomy at the Royal Normal School in 1886, but his real love remained evolution. Dubois knew that Darwin's opponents were constantly pointing out the almost complete lack of fossil evidence for human evolution. He carefully studied the principal evidence then available, the bones of Neanderthal specimens. These were regarded by most authorities, among them Thomas Huxley, as too close to the modern human type to be truly intermediate between fossil apes and modern humans. The German scientist Ernst Haeckel had, however, predicted that the bones of a real missing link would eventually be found. Haeckel even commissioned a painting of the creature, whom he called Pithecanthropus. In Greek, Pitheko means ape, and anthropos means man. Influenced by Haeckel's vision of Pithecanthropus, Dubois resolved to someday find the ape man's bones. Mindful of Darwin's suggestion that humanity's forebears lived in some warm, forest-clad land, Dubois became convinced that Pithecanthropus would be found in Africa or the East Indies. Because he could more easily reach the East Indies, which was then under Dutch rule, he decided to journey there and begin his quest. He applied first to private philanthropists and the government, requesting financing for a scientific expedition, but was turned down. He then accepted an appointment as an army surgeon in Sumatra. With his friends doubting his sanity, he gave up his comfortable post as a college lecturer and with his young wife set sail for the East Indies in December of 1887 on the SS Princess Amalie. In 1888, Dubois found himself stationed at a small military hospital in the interior of Sumatra. In his spare time and using his own funds, Dubois investigated Sumatran caves, finding fossils of rhinos and elephants.
I think this guy was just a coffee fanatic.
He was going to Sumatra. He does find a bunch of fossils, though, and he's like, these aren't good enough.
But then he ultimately finds one in Java?
Yeah.
Or Borneo.
Yeah. You're right. He's going to Java. Finding fossils of rhinos and elephants and the teeth of an orangutan, but no hominid remains. In 1890, after suffering an attack of malaria, Dubois was placed on inactive duty and transferred from Sumatra to Java, where the climate was somewhat drier and healthier, and there was more coffee. He and his wife set up housekeeping in a place that I definitely can't pronounce on eastern Java's southern coast. During the dry season of 1891, Dubois conducted excavations on the bank of the Solo River in central Java, near the village of Trinil. His laborers took out many fossil animal bones. In September, they turned up a particularly interesting item.
I'm already skeptical of this whole thing. It's like, if I have this right in my head, I may be wrong, but the idea is that, like, okay, he's looking at the theory of evolution of man, and then he just is like, where should I look for the missing link? Well, warm climate. Today.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I'll go to Africa.
Yeah. A warm.
and then he goes someplace and then gets sick and gets transferred to another place where he makes the find.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah. Yeah. Darwin's suggestion that humanity's forebears lived in some warm forest-clad land
He takes and goes,
2 million years ago.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It's like, really? So he picks one that's like warm.
And forest-clad now. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
I don't, that's just, come on.
well, I mean,
I'm not saying that he didn't find anything legitimate. My point is that it's like, you can see now that like, okay, here, and so the theory develops and here's where it happened and blah, 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 blah. And so I don't know.
it all holds
well-
up better if you don't analyze the stack of assumptions.
I really, well, I'm also interested in, I'm like, I go out and hunt fossils all the time. I don't find rhinos and, rhinoceroses and freaking like this dude is like, yeah, he's like a military dude. He's on duty and on his off days or whatever, he goes out into caves and he's finding like tons of fossils. Big, huge bones of very large animals. And then he goes to Java and then he starts digging in the side of a river and finds hundreds of fossil bones. And I'm just like, how does this happen? How come I can't do this? Maybe you just have to be in the right place. I don't know.
Or maybe he just was a genius. or
Yeah.
something. I don't know.
So also, he's in Indonesia, and there's such a thing as the Java rhino, which is now an endangered species, but totally exists everywhere there.
Yeah.
Who's to say that they're really super ancient or not?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, there's
Yeah. So in Sumatra, he found fossils of rhino and elephant and the teeth of an orangutan.
which are all animals that are still there.
okay. Again, you have to remember that a fossil doesn't necessarily have to be that old.
True.
It doesn't have to be stone.
Yeah.
It's just fossilized, meaning preserved.
Yeah.
That's all.
So these were in caves, so they're
Preserved.
fossil, yeah.
They're fossils. Yeah. I mean, if you dig up bones, they're fossils basically. If they've been preserved for a length of time, like
yeah.
If they're outside the normal decomposition window.
yes,
Right.
We're not talking about lithification here
Yeah.
necessarily.
So on the Solo River in central Java, his laborers took out many fossil animal bones. And in September, they turned up a particularly interesting item, a primate tooth, apparently a third upper right molar, or a wisdom tooth. Dubois, believing he had come upon the remains of an extinct giant chimpanzee, ordered his laborers to concentrate their work around the place where this tooth had turned up.
He did have laborers,
Yes.
so
That's right.
He's finding more stuff than you are.
Right. I don't have laborers. I need some of those. In October, they found what appeared to be a turtle shell. But when Dubois inspected it, he saw it was actually the top part of a cranium, heavily fossilized and having the same color as the volcanic soil. So I wonder if by heavily fossilized, they mean lithified.
More and more, yeah. Heavily fossilized to me would mean preserved for longer.
And this is,
right.
That's the picture at the top of the skull. That's
Wow.
what they found.
So then, so far to recap, we have a guy who went looking for a specific thing, honed in on his first piece of evidence, went further in on it, and has had no real observation bias at any point, is the way it's told.
Yeah, he definitely had observation bias. He was there to find it,
Yeah.
right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the stack of assumptions again. Like, he goes somewhere that was supposedly warm 2 million years ago.
Well, they didn't know how old it was.
But still, I mean, it's...
And yeah, I think this thing is supposed to be 800,000 years old. But still.
Yeah. When you look at it through the lens of what things did he already have decided before this is found,
Yeah.
it becomes a little rough. But
Right. He went to find Pithecanthropus.
right, and
was-
Australopithecus, which is found in Africa by the Lakeys later,
Yeah.
also fills a gap in a prediction made by a guy who was saying this will be validated when someone finds this thing that
Yes,
he
a
gives
lot
a
of these
name
are
for
like
that they then name it.
Yeah, that's right. That's what happened with this. He finds this, and they're like, that's Pithecanthropus. Because the concept was, what we need is the intermediary 50-50 transition guy.
Yeah.
Okay, so the heavily fossilized, the fragment's most distinctive feature was the large protruding ridge over the eye sockets, leading Dubois to suspect the cranium had belonged to an ape. The onset of the rainy season then brings an end to the year's digging. In a report published in the government mining bulletin, Dubois made no suggestion that the fossils belonged to a creature transitional to humans. So initially he thinks it's an ape. He thinks it's a chimpanzee or something. In August of 1892, Dubois returned and found there, among bones of deer, rhinoceroses, hyenas, crocodiles, pigs, tigers, and extinct elephants, a fossilized human-like femur. This femur was found about 45 feet from where the skull cap and the molar were dug up, and later another molar was found 10 feet from the skull cap. Dubois believed the molars, skull, and femur all came from the same animal, which he still considered to be an extinct giant chimpanzee. So, again, I'm pointing out, who finds all of these fossils?
Sounds like it's all in a blender cave.
Yes, it's a blender for sure. Deer, rhinoceros, hyenas, crocodiles, pigs, tigers, and extinct elephants.
By the way, Russ, that reminds me, you'd have an easier time finding laborers if every time they found fish, you didn't go, "You have no way of knowing if that's a fish." Just saying.
You're right. Okay, so in 1963, Richard Carrington stated in his book, A Million Years of Man, Dubois was at first inclined to regard his skull cap and teeth as belonging to a chimpanzee, in spite of the fact that there is no known evidence that this ape or any of its ancestors ever lived in Asia. But, on reflection, and after corresponding with the great Ernst Haeckel, professor of zoology at the University of Jena, he declared them to belong to a creature which seemed admirably suited to being the role of the missing link. We have not found any correspondence Dubois may have had with Haeckel, but if further research were to turn it up, it would add considerably to our knowledge of the circumstances surrounding the birth of Pithecanthropus erectus. So him and the guy who invented and painted the picture of the hypothetical Pithecanthropus started talking to each other. And I guess what they're implying is that before that happened, he was like, this is a giant chimpanzee or something. But then he starts communicating with this guy, and then it's after that he decides to call it Pithecanthropus. That guy really wanted Pithecanthropus to be found and was like, we need to say that that's what this is.
Well, that explains how he took 2 wisdom teeth, a femur, and a skull cap blown apart 50 feet radius or diameter circle could lead to that.
Yeah, and even though I find the mix of all the animal bones to be extraordinary, I think that's an extraordinary circumstance to have, like we know that these things occur, but those are special places where all of these animals are mixed together. That actually very much lessens the value because, like, how do you know that they're the same thing,
Yeah.
When you're finding an elephant and you can identify it as an elephant and you find other elephant bones, you're like, these are other elephant bones. Is it the same elephant?
Yeah.
When they're 50 feet apart? Maybe.
Yeah.
But it could be that there are many elephants in there. Right? But when you're finding unknown creatures, like we have a skull cap here of something that is unknown.
We don't recognize it.
Yeah. And we have a femur of something else that is unknown, and a tooth of something that's also unknown. You're just going to say, well, since they're all unknown, they must be the same unknown thing, even though they're 50 feet apart.
Also, they don't list any ape remains of any kind.
Right.
In the mix.
Yeah. That's another good point.
Well,
okay.
He thought,
Huh?
he thought that that's what it might have been.
Yeah, he did think that. Yeah. Okay, so obviously both men had a substantial emotional and intellectual stake in finding an ape-man specimen. Haeckel, on hearing from Dubois of his discovery, telegraphed this message: "From the inventor of Pithecanthropus to his happy discoverer."
Those are their nicknames for each other.
Yeah. It was only in 1994 that Dubois finally published a complete report of his discovery. Therein he wrote, "Pithecanthropus is the transitional form which, in accordance with the doctrine of evolution, must have existed between man and the anthropoids. Pithecanthropus erectus, we should carefully note, had itself undergone an evolutionary transition within the mind of Dubois from fossil chimpanzee to transitional anthropoid. What factors, other than Haeckel's influence, led Dubois to consider his specimen transitional between fossil apes and modern humans? Dubois found that the volume of the Pithecanthropus skull was in the range of 800 to 1,000 cubic centimeters. Modern apes average 500 cubic centimeters, while modern human skulls average 1,400 cubic centimeters, thus placing the Trinil skull midway between them. To Dubois, this indicated an evolutionary relationship. But logically speaking, one could have creatures with different sizes of brains without having to posit an evolutionary progression from smaller to larger. Furthermore, in the Pleistocene, many mammalian species were represented by forms much larger than today's. Thus, the Pithecanthropus skull might not belong to a transitional anthropoid, but to an exceptionally large Middle Pleistocene gibbon, with a skull bigger than that of modern gibbons. Today, anthropologists still routinely describe an evolutionary progression of hominid skulls, increasing in size with the passage of time, from early Pleistocene Australopithecus, first discovered in 1924, to Middle Pleistocene Java man, now known as Homo erectus, to late Pleistocene Homo sapiens sapiens, but the sequence is preserved only at the cost of eliminating skulls that disrupt it. For example, the Castanedolo skull discussed in Chapter 7 is older than that of Java man, but is larger in cranial capacity, and in fact it is fully human in size and morphology. And so even one such exception is sufficient to invalidate the whole proposed evolutionary sequence. Dubois observed that although the Trinil skull was very ape-like in some of its features, such as the prominent brow ridges, the thigh bone was almost human. This indicated that Pithecanthropus had walked upright, hence the species designation erectus. It is important, however, to keep in mind that the femur of Pithecanthropus erectus was found fully 45 feet from the place where the skull was unearthed, in a stratum containing hundreds of other animal bones. This circumstance makes doubtful the claim that both the thigh bone and the skull actually belong to the same creature or even the same species. When Dubois' reports began reaching Europe, they received much attention. Haeckel, of course, was among those celebrating Pithecanthropus as the strongest proof to date of human evolution. Now the state of affairs in this great battle for truth has been radically altered by Eugene Dubois' discovery of the fossil Pithecanthropus erectus, proclaimed the triumphant Haeckel. This is the great battle for truth, guys. He has actually provided us with the bones of the ape man I had postulated. This find is more important to anthropology than the much lauded discovery of the X-ray to physics. There is an almost religious tone of prophecy in fulfillment in Haeckel's remarks. But Haeckel had a history of overstating physiological evidence to support the doctrine of evolution. An academic court at the University of Jena once found him guilty of falsifying drawings of embryos of various animals in order to demonstrate his particular view of the origin of species. So, okay. I'm not sure if that might be a fallacy of composition there.
Yeah.
In 1895, Dubois decided to return to Europe to display his Pithecanthropus to what he was certain would be an admiring and supportive audience of scientists. Soon after arriving, he exhibited his specimens and presented reports at the Third International Congress of Zoology at Leiden in Holland. Although some of the scientists present at the Congress were, like Haeckel, anxious to support the discovery as a fossil ape man, others thought it merely an ape, while others challenged the idea that the bones belonged to the same individual. Dubois exhibited his treasured bones at Paris and in London and Berlin. In December of 1895, experts from around the world gathered at the Berlin Society for Anthropology, Ethnology, and Prehistory to pass judgment on Dubois' Pithecanthropus specimens. The president of the society refused to chair the meeting. In the controversy-ridden discussion that followed, the Swiss anatomist Coleman said the creature was an ape. The chairman himself said the femur was fully human and further stated, the skull has a deep suture between the low vault and the upper edge of the orbits. Such a suture is found only in apes, not in man. Thus, this skull must belong to an ape. In my opinion, this creature was an animal, a giant gibbon. In fact, the thigh bone has not the slightest connection with the skull. And this opinion contrasted strikingly with that of Haeckel and others who remained convinced that Dubois' Java man was a genuine human ancestor. So yeah, it's an interesting find, but I feel like you can't find hundreds of bones of all kinds of stuff and then sort of pick and choose and kind of put them together. You know, maybe it was a single animal, but...
So earlier when I criticized you for saying there's no way you can know that, you really should have been in the room at this conference and be like, there's no way you can know that.
Yeah. It's not a fish. All right. The Selenka expedition.
So is this find still accepted today?
Yeah. There's a monument to it. He was pointing that out in the beginning of the chapter.
Okay.
This Java man is now called Homo erectus instead of Pithecanthropus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. To resolve some of the questions surrounding the Pithecanthropus fossil and their discovery, Emil Selenka, professor of zoology at Munich University in Germany, prepared a full-fledged expedition to Java, but he died before it departed. His wife, Professor Lenore Selenka, took over the effort and conducted excavations at Trinil in the years 1907 to 1908, employing 75 laborers. Man, gonna need a lot of those guys. To hunt for more Pithecanthropus erectus fossils. Altogether, Selenka's team of geologists and paleontologists sent back to Europe 43 boxes of fossils, but they included not a single new fragment of Pithecanthropus. The expedition did, however, find in the Trinil strata signs of a human presence, splintered animal bones, charcoal, and foundations of hearths.
Wow.
Signs like this led Lenore Selenka to conclude that humans and Pithecanthropus erectus were contemporary. The implications of all this for an evolutionary interpretation of Dubois' Pithecanthropus specimens were and still are unsettling. Furthermore, in 1924, George Grant McCurdy, a Yale professor of anthropology, wrote in his book Human Origins, the Selenka expedition of 1907 to 1908 secured a tooth, which is said by Walkoff to be definitely human. It is a third molar from a neighboring stream bed and from deposits older than those in which the Pithecanthropus erectus was found. So they found a fully modern human tooth in older strata on the other side of the river from where the first Homo erectus skeleton was found. Pieces were found.
All right. What's weird to me is that it doesn't seem to matter to me. Like, if you take the idea of evolution, like, why does it matter if two, say, like a species and its ancestors, evolutionary species are coexisting? Like, that shouldn't really matter, right? Because it's not as though that, like, let's just say it was a real halfway between creature.
Yeah.
It's not as though that one specifically was the halfway guy that ultimately was the father of modern humans and
Right,
or
yeah,
mother of modern humans.
Right. Why can't ancestor...
Because if they're just branching, they're coexisting as they're branching. Mm-hmm. So if some are viable, some branches are viable, like...
They become the dominant.
They could, in other words, they can still exist while the other branch that is actually an ancestor exists.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't know enough about this to...
It's also interesting to me that the way that the scrutiny is intensified, moving goalpost as far as it needs to be to discredit something outside the model. We're currently talking about an accepted find where a tooth was found in a river how many feet away from the other bones, and that's accepted? When everything else, it's like, oh, well, that's over here, and then this is...
Well, I think the tooth was a modern human tooth.
Yeah, the tooth is not accepted because it's a modern human tooth, and it was underneath the other finds, in strata underneath the other finds on the other side of the river. So they're just pointing out that this makes it more confusing.
Right.
And that the Selenka expedition itself found tons. They sent back 43 boxes of fossils.
Well, right, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's all of this, it's hard to make a conclusion thing, yet this is still concluded and accepted as fact. If this was something being claimed like the Choppa-Malalan, glad I got a chance to say that word.
Choppa-Malalan, yeah.
Stuff. Like, if it was that kind of, outrageous claims require...
Yeah, they would definitely not accept it. Yeah.
And so...
Well, that's the whole point of this part of the book.
Yeah, it's just, that is insane to me.
Yeah.
That based on the scrutiny of other things that we've heard all through,
right.
Once it comes to something included in the model, it's, but I mean, we knew it was going to be there because that's what makes sense.
Right. Yeah. It fits the model, so there's very little questions.
Right.
But they're also, I think they're pointing out that lots of people did ask the right questions.
And it just got steamrolled.
Yeah. Like the guy refused to chair the meeting. He's like, this is ridiculous. This is a gibbon skull. Okay, so Dubois withdraws from the battle. Meanwhile, the status of Dubois' ape-man remained controversial, surveying the range of opinion about Pithecanthropus. Berlin zoologist Wilhelm Dames gathered statements from several scientists. 3 said Pithecanthropus was an ape, 5 said it was a human, 6 said it was an ape-man, and 6 said it was a missing link, and 2 said it was a link between the missing link and man. But while many scientists maintained their doubts, others followed Haeckel in hailing Java Man as stunning proof of Darwin's theory. Some used Java Man to discredit evidence for a fully human presence in the Tertiary. As we learned in Chapter 5, W.H. Holmes dismissed the discoveries of stone tools in Tertiary auriferous gravels of California because they implied a human race older by at least 1/2 than Pithecanthropus erectus of Dubois, which may be regarded as an incipient form of human creature only. At a certain point, Dubois became completely disappointed with the mixed reception the scientific community gave to his Pithecanthropus, so he stopped showing his specimens, and some say that he kept them for some time beneath the floorboards in his home. In any case, they remained hidden from view for some 25 years until 1932. During and after the period of withdrawal, the controversies concerning Pithecanthropus continued. Marcelin Buell, the director of the Institute of Human Paleontology in Paris, reported, as had other scientists, that the layer in which the Pithecanthropus skullcap and femur were said to have been found contained numerous fossils of bones of fish, reptiles, and mammals. Why, therefore, should anyone believe the skullcap and femur came from the same individual or even the same species? Buell, like Virchow, stated that the femur was identical to that of a modern human, whereas the skullcap resembled that of an ape, possibly a large gibbon. In 1941, Dr. F. Johnson, director of the Cenozoic Research Laboratory at Beijing Union Medical College, also stated that there was no justification for attributing the femur and the skullcap to the same individual. The femur, Johnson said, was very similar to that of a modern human, and its original position in the strata was not securely established. Modern researchers have employed chemical dating techniques to determine whether or not the original Pithecanthropus skull and femur were both contemporary with the Middle Pleistocene fauna, but the results were inconclusive.
Yeah.
More femurs. The belated revelation that more femurs had been discovered in Java further complicates the issue. In 1932, Dr. Bernsen and Eugene Dubois recovered 3 femurs from a box of fossil mammalian bones in the Leiden Museum in the Netherlands. The box contained specimens said to have been excavated in 1900 by Dubois' assistant from the same Trinil deposits on the left bank of the Solo River that had yielded Dubois' first Java Man finds. Dr. Bernsen died shortly thereafter without providing further information about the details of this museum discovery. Dubois stated that he was not present when the femurs were taken out by his assistant. Therefore, the exact location of the femurs in the excavation, which was 75 meters long by 6 meters wide, so 246 feet by 20 to 46 feet, was unknown to him. According to standard paleontological procedures, this uncertainty greatly reduces the value of the bones as evidence of any sort. Nevertheless, authorities later assigned these femurs to a particular stratum without mentioning the dubious circumstances of their discovery in boxes of fossils 30 years after they were originally excavated.
Wow.
In addition to the 3 femurs found by the assistant, 2 more femoral fragments turned up in the Leiden Museum. The existence of the additional femurs has important implications for the original Pithecanthropus skull and femur found by Dubois in the 1890s. The ape-like skull and human-like femur were found at a great distance from each other, but Dubois assigned them to the same creature. He suggested that the bones were found separated because Pithecanthropus had been dismembered by a crocodile.
What?
But if you throw in more human-like femurs, that argument loses a great deal of its force.
Well, no, he just
It doesn't start out with a whole lot of force either, I would say.
He had 4 legs, this ancient
Right,
human,
yeah.
and crocodile ate all of them.
Where were the other skulls? Were they ape-like skulls like the one found? And what about the skull that was found? Does it really go with the femur that was found 45 feet away? Or does it belong with one of the other femurs that later turned up? Or maybe with a femur of an entirely different sort?
Just to make sure, when we keep saying skull, we're talking about the skull plate, right? There never was a complete intact
It's just
skull
just the cap. It includes the brow ridges and everything above that.
And sutures that
Right.
are identical to some.
Found in apes,
the,
but not
the gibbons. Yeah, apes.
And we don't have a whole leg. We just have an upper leg and a skull cap.
It kind of reminds me of is it Brontosaurus?
Yeah,
They put the
something
wrong
like
head
that.
on the
yeah,
body. Yeah.
and then it became the Apatosaurus later, I think, because they
Yeah, so it's like, okay, that's mistakes are made, right? You find a skull, you're looking for something specific. Now, to me, it seems once you're like, okay, I'm finding hundreds of animal bones of all different kinds, deer and rhinoceros, everything. And did he find crocodiles? Why did he think he was eaten by a crocodile? Are there crocodiles in there?
It was a time traveling croc.
So it was like
It was back when it was a swamp.
Yes. It was the ape man eaten by a dinosaur, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, yeah. But the point is that you can make that mistake. You can put the skeleton together wrong, right? But it seems like he actually has it right at the beginning. He sees the skull and he's like, "This is a chimpanzee or something."
Big gibbon.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't. He was not thinking gibbon, but other people said that.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was thinking it was some kind of ape. He was not thinking that it was the. He wasn't thinking it was the missing link. It was too ape-like. Then he finds a femur, which is very human, and he's like, "Aha! If I put these two together, this thing that's all the way human and this thing that's all the way ape, I suddenly have a missing link that's half ape and half man."
Upper half, totally ape. Bottom half, totally man.
Yeah. Yeah. But the other evidence for him that may be working is that the skull implies a cranial capacity much higher than modern
Right.
apes. But again, these are Pleistocene animals. So
And as someone who's observed fossils with me, I'm all about looking at something and thinking.
I've never observed any fossils
No,
with you.
you know what, dude? They were fossils and they were fish. But the point I'm making is I'm totally okay with somebody looking at something and theorizing as to what it could be or what it could mean.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like looking at clouds. But this guy was looking at clouds and he was, oh, look, there's a puppy. And even though it looked nothing like a puppy, everybody goes, well, I guess we've done that now. Mystery solved. There's a puppy.
Yeah.
Like it. The assertion of the definite nature of these facts is highly questionable.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, I think Kyle was making this physics analogy earlier, but in physics, they do this. They run their calculations on their standard model and they predict some particle, and then they set up big experiments to see if they can find that particular kind of particle.
Right.
So that's sort of what was happening here. Somebody was like, they were like, okay, evolution, we're accepting it. There must be a transitional being. Somebody paints a picture of what it might look like. They give it a name, and then people start setting out to find that thing.
Right. Totally understandable.
Yeah. But you're right. I should have been there. So I could be like, that's not a fish.
Or it could be a fish, but you can't know.
Yeah. All right. I think that's it for this week.
Damn.
Yep.
That's good stuff. Yeah.
Good stuff.
I feel like I was like trying to nail that guy to the wall right from the get-go, but it just the first part, it just I don't know.
You're like, this sounds suspicious.
Well, it's just because of the whole out of Africa
yeah.
thing, right?
Yeah.
And this random guy just picks Africa,
Yeah.
and that's where he's going to go look. Like, so this is before the whole out of Africa theory develops, right?
Yeah.
And even then, like,
He just
because it's easier to get to the East Indies, like he ends up in Indonesia and finds the first thing that's a part of this theory, and it somehow still gets changed over to out of Africa.
I also like it's easier to get to the East Indies, you know? It's like they're probably in Africa, but I can get here easier, so I'll just look there. You know, that's
And then he
like the
finds
whole
it
like, why
anyway.
are you looking for your keys under the street lamp? Well, because it's bright and I can see here, but you probably right? Where did you lose them? Over there in the dark. Well, why are you looking here? Well, there's light here. Right?
Don't worry, if I look long enough, eventually I'll find my keys.
Yeah.
I just think that I don't really have a problem with, you know, obviously there's other hominids that are like pretty legit. You know what I mean? Like
Oh, yeah.
legitimate finds, right?
And they talk later in the book, we'll get into it next week some, about where people eventually do find complete Homo erectus skeletons, right? It's just, is this early Java man one of them? And the fact that it was used to massively discredit contemporary finds of tertiary modern humans.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And how much does it color the later findings?
But where I was going to go with that is that like to rule out that they could be found in on other continents,
Yeah.
you know, or in So that's it's like this whole idea was built. Anyway, we'll learn about it.
Yeah.
We'll learn more about it next time.
Yeah. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. Email is brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. So keep on sending those emails. I'm still getting them, and I will start reading them on the show again. Going to take a while to catch up.
And by the way, I get emails for every comment that's put on the website. So I always read all those.
Yeah. I get, because you're getting notified?
Every now and again I respond.
I've seen that, yeah. Dr. Inspector
Professor Johnson.
Professor Johnson. That's right. Yeah.
Dr. Professor Inspector
Hey,
Johnson.
get out the PayPal notes.
All right.
Check out the website, brothersoftheserpent.com, that Kyle was just talking about. You can comment there, and we do get email notifications of the comments, and I do, as you heard today, read them on the show sometimes. But yeah, the website has all kinds of great stuff, including the encyclopedia, the glossary, the SnakeSkins store, which is our merchandise store. That includes t-shirt designs by me and by Jeff, who runs the Discord. And maybe other people eventually as well. Jeff has some great designs, like the Johnson shirt. Everybody should have one of those. It's got the Brothers of the Serpent logo on the back and a thing that looks like a Johnson name patch on the front. We gotta,
yeah, we gotta get those.
Gotta get some of those.
I can't remember what I read on here, but I'm going to start with this one. This is back in March. It says, I heard you guys on Uncharted X a month or two ago, and I could tell right away that your blend of intellectual curiosity, creativity, and humor was a perfect fit for me. By the way, your music is on point as well. Thank you, buddy.
Yeah.
So, in the depths of a New England winter, I decided to get out of my cave and resume daily walks, no matter how cold, and listen to you guys while trying to fight off frostbite, but not snakebite. Snakes! Your show is the best show I've ever listened to. Your blend of seeking the truth in ancient mysteries, challenging the mainstream assumptions, and applying what used to be common sense, actual scientific approaches to these mysteries is fantastic. Please accept this meager snake offering for now, and I will be back for more, or with more. Your fellow snake brother, Phil, in Massachusetts.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you, buddy. And then Kevin. He says, I made it to 100 and loved every sode. Some more than others. And here is your buck a show. Wow. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you, buddy.
You should have gone to pyramids with us, damn it. Keep up the amazing work.
Snakes! Snakes!
So yeah, I guess you
Thanks,
you
man.
got to go to pyramids already.
Yeah.
And
A buck a show, so he gave us $99?
I guess he screwed that up.
Hey, this sounds like a money-making trick. Right? Give us a buck a show. Once you get to episode 100, send us $100.
And this is from Ethan. He says, "Get to pyramids." Ethan, extraneous carp.
All right. Thank you, buddy.
By the way, I say that the next episode is episode 5,000.
From Maverick, brain expansion fee. Expecting a return on investment of at least 30%, or to see you guys actually go to a pyramid, or I want my money back. That's right. This guy runs a hard bargain.
That's right.
Hey. And from Franklin, these are some truly extraordinary times, snakes. Got to get back to work. Talk to you later.
There you go.
Frank.
Thanks, buddy. Is it that Frank?
But as always, thank you, Frank. You know who you are.
It could be a different Frank.
Yeah, it could be, but still.
Yeah.
You just,
Frank.
it's Frank.
The greatness of the Frank is such that all Franks become the Frank.
That's right.
And somebody from Denmark, a.k.a. Oblique.
Yes.
Oblique A in Denmark.
Yeah, that's also his name in the Discord.
All right, Oblique A. Thanks
Yeah,
for the
thank you.
for the donation,
Thank
buddy.
you.
Much appreciated. Let's see who else we got here. Anybody else? Who else? And from Joshua. Thanks, lads. Anything I should look for in Alaska?
Hey. I have to get back to you on that one.
Yeah,
There
giant
could be a
pyramids
pyramid up
in
there.
the tundra.
That's right. Also, like Pleistocene mammal stuff frozen in ice in the gravel bearing, in the gold bearing tundra up there. You can go find that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere out there.
And you know what? I would like to make. We should just make all of you executive producers of this show.
There you go.
Because those are nice donations, buddies.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much. And if you guys want to donate to the show, there is on the website links to the Patreon, which is basically just you can go to patreon.com/Brothers of the Serpent. That's an easy way to get there. And that there's also a PayPal donation button there. And I'm going to revamp that section of the website and make it its own page so that I can just say brothersoftheserpent.com/support or something like that, like Darren does.
Yeah.
But right now it's just on the sidebar on the right. But yeah, if you want to support the show, and like you heard earlier, we're doing special Patreon stuff, or we will be. We made a short video earlier today, secret stuff. So if you want to get access to that, you can join the Patreon. Thanks to all of the admins in the Discord. All of you guys are awesome. Janus, Neo Hippie, Black Shaman, LP McQuack. That's he's pretty good too.
Oh, yeah.
I guess he's all right. Eldor, all of you guys. I know I'm forgetting some. Jeff, of course, is in there. Thank you guys so much. It's great to have you guys running that place. I don't have to do anything, which is the whole point. So thank you guys so much. And thanks to History Shift, who makes all of our YouTube videos. Also, special shout out again to Pod Doodles. I keep forgetting to do this. He does take some of our podcasts and turn them into doodles, which you can watch on YouTube. Really cool. So check him out on YouTube and on Twitter. Thanks to Where Did the Road Go? Soraya over there, and Ben from Uncharted X, and all of you listeners out there. We love you guys.
Always have. Should we say anything about upcoming trips?
Upcoming trips. Yes. September, we're going back to the Scablands. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yep. And we got April in Canyonlands.
Yeah.
And what else? What else am I?
We're actually Darren's working on a festival in Washington.
That's right.
He hasn't completely pulled the trigger on it, but Darren.
Yeah.
He's gonna do it.
Yeah.
And like the big one. 2022.
Egypt.
That's right.
Yes.
Have we talked about this on the show?
We briefly mentioned it. Yeah. So Darren's we got the date set. We're working with Ben from Uncharted X and the Komet School over there in Egypt.
That's
with
right.
Yusuf.
We're doing it.
We've got a lot of details to iron out. Lots of details to iron out. We still don't know the price of the tickets or anything like that, but there's already a sign-up list. So if you guys are interested in the Egypt trip, you can get on the list without any monetary commitment at this point by just emailing Darren and telling him you're interested in the trip, and that'll put you on the list. But the prices are still to be announced, and and the itinerary, because we have to work all that out. We got a bunch of meetings ahead of us, and we got to talk to Yusuf and Ben and everybody. So
it's going to be expensive.
Yes,
but it's going to be the trip of a lifetime.
That's right.
And so we very much appreciate the donations, because we're going to need them.
That's right. We are going to need them. That's right. Yeah, so, you're right. That was good to mention that. So, if you're interested in any of these trips, you can go to contact@thecabin.com or just email Darren directly, Darren@grimerica.ca.
And dude, tell him,
support.
put you on the list.
Yeah.
And if you end up not being able to make it work, that's okay.
Yeah.
Because there's no obligation right now. And once we get all the details ironed out, if you decide, you know what, I'm not going to be able to do that,
Yeah.
you're good.
Right.
Plus, it helps with figuring out ballpark. How many people do we have going to this event? Like, what
Yeah.
kind of preparations need to be made?
Well, the way the trips usually work is we figure out like we have this many slots,
Right.
and we need to fill them all, right? Otherwise, you have
Yeah.
problems. So what we have to do is look at the itinerary, what special access we're going to get, how long we're going to be there, how much the cadet school says the whole thing is going to cost. They figure out everything because they know how to work out all the bribes you need to pay and all that stuff. Right? I'm serious, for special access.
Right. Yeah.
Ben was telling us that like special access for some of these sites cost many thousands of dollars, right? And you're allowed to go there for a couple of hours, and it costs $5-6 grand.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to work all that out, and once we've got all that worked out, we can figure out how much money is the trip going to cost, and then we have to figure out how many people do we need to take in order to make this not cost too much money per person.
Right.
So we still have to work all that out.
Lots of stuff. To
Yes,
figure out.
but you can get on the list by emailing Darren right now. So
Yeah.
do that if you're interested
And
in
it
at
won't hurt.
all in going. Yeah, and you're under no obligation at this point. You're just on the list as being interested. So yeah, do that for sure. And yeah, I think that's it. But I started the whole thing. We love you guys.
Always have.
Always will.
Kyle's pointing at me again. Good night, Adamu.
Get
Get back to work.